Hello, hello. Can everybody hear me? Is anybody in chat? Hey, can everybody hear me? I'm always like worried. Like last night when I completely forgot to turn the microphone on. Can hear you nicely. Very cool. Hello, everybody. Hey, Adriana. Hey, guys. It's good to be back. Oh my gosh. Hopefully we don't have any tech difficulties tonight. I'm good. I hope everybody's doing well. Um yeah, to anybody who was here last night, welcome back. Anybody who's here for the first time, welcome. If you weren't here last night, what we did was we ended up reading first 6 chapters in Nancy Drew's Secret of the Old Clock. I'm kind of doing this like I guess proof of concept. I'm trying to see if, like reading streams to cover, do commentary on novels would be fun or something that people would like. Everybody can hear me. That's great. I'm so glad. But no, just trying to see if this is like if chill streams where, we just read and talk about a book like we're all in book club would be something that, people like or would even want. You missed last night. It's okay. If you are interested in it, there's always, the VODs are always up on the homepage of the channel. Reading the books are a novel idea. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the pun. So yeah, so we're just kind of, doing some chill streams where I read and we talk about a book, and we're starting with Secret of the Old Clock, which is so far good. I haven't read a Nancy Drew book in a long time. I collect them. I haven't read one in an actual hot second, but so far we've read 6 chapters. And for those of you who weren't here, I'm trying to summarize the first few chapters we read pretty easily. So, Secret of the Old Clock, Nancy Drew, she gets tied up in a dispute over a mysterious will. This dude who was like a really cool old guy had a bunch of relatives who like needed money, and when he would always say like, well, you're gonna get all my money in my will, and then nobody did. All the money went to this like horrible family in town that everybody hates, and it was like really sketchy, and Nancy's convinced that there's a second will somewhere. So that's the mystery that she solves in the very, very first Nancy Drew book that was ever written. Missed it last time too, and hi, just thought I'd drop by when I have a little bit to spare. Hi, thank you for dropping in. Yeah, it's just a really chill, these are just really chill streams. I thought they'd be fun, one, for me to talk about, books that I'm nostalgic about, because talking about nostalgic content, books are definitely a part of that, and I can't really, like, the regular video format that I work with on the channel doesn't really lend itself well to books, so I thought a stream might be better. Explosions, death, deceit, and more. That's a great way to describe the first 6 chapters. Right in the beginning of the book, a kid almost like she does fall off a bridge, and Nancy has to save her life. It's like super intense. We were all like, I was reading it, and I haven't read this book in a really long time, so I'm just as surprised as everybody else. So I'm reading it, and everybody's just like, oh my god. It's actually kind of intense, because like I remember reading something one time about how like, the original because Caroline Keene is a pen name, so the original team behind Nancy Drew books were like adamant that like Nancy wasn't going to solve murders because it was a kid's book and it was 1930, so like it was kind of like scandalous to like even tell kids about like crime, I guess, but they really went in kind of hard sometimes, for sure. Yeah, and so it's just really funny. It was, oh my gosh, it's just so It's very 1930s. Like, I was thinking about it this morning, and I was like, this book, I mean, this is 3 books, but this book, the first one that we're reading, this is almost 100 years old. Like, literally, this book is almost a century old, and when you think about that, it gives me a headache. Although it's not really surprising, right? Because we talked about it, like, every crime but murder sounds safe. Yeah, pretty much. I'm convinced that all the kids that were obsessed with, like, these books and the Hardy Boys and all that, we all grew up to be super into true crime these days. Because I know I did. I definitely, that love of forensics has definitely carried over into, like, my adult life. But yeah, this book is almost 100 years old. It is a classic mystery novel. And it definitely shows sometimes that it's almost 100 years old, because, like, we talked about it a little bit in the last stream for those of you who weren't there, although we didn't read far enough to really see much of it, but, like, Nancy Drew is known for having to go through a bunch of sexism, because people are like, what, a girl detective? We've never heard of one of those. Girls haven't been invented yet. Like, that's kind of the vibe. I'm still traumatized by CW's Nancy Drew series. Was it terrible? I heard that it was kind of terrible. Maybe that was a limited whatever, but I feel like they're always, like, rebooting Nancy Drew, and they never really understand Nancy Drew, right? Like, I feel like if you're gonna do Nancy Drew justice, you've got to make it like a true noir series. Other than we wear less hats these days, times haven't changed much. Honestly, that's very sad. Back at it again with the reading and vibing. Welcome, Cameron. Welcome back. Yeah, reading and vibing. I like that. So far, I've enjoyed these series. We're just talking about, like, how insane Nancy Drew books are, and kind of catching everybody up for those who weren't in chat last night. And talking about how it's kind of outdated. There's a lot of, you know, sexism in Nancy Drew books, because it was 1930. Yeah. Cameron, I just read your comment, yay, and my brain, like, auto-connected it with sexism. I was like, yay, sexism! That made me laugh. Hey, Jay, welcome back. Yeah, we're catching everybody up, on this book that we're gonna continue reading. Nancy Drew fish and punch sexism in the face. Hell yeah. Yeah, no, this book is, like, Nancy Drew books are adorable. Sexism for the win. Yeah, Nancy Drew books are adorable, but there definitely are some, at least, like, you know, at least, like, light cases of sexism up to, like, major cases of sexism. And, you know, there's just, like, yeah, I struggled a little bit last night, for those of you who were there, because my brain was, like, trying to reorient itself to, like, the kind of old-timey way that they would speak in these. Like, there's one point in this book where, like, one of the characters, is talking about how Josiah Crowley, that's the old guy who died, is, like, super eccentric, and they use the word, like, eccentric in this book pretty synonymous with, like, queer, like, you know how they used to use that word in that way, and I was just like, oh, this is an old book. But yeah, it's very outdated, but they're very, like, kind of just, like, charming old books, you know what I mean? H.J. is a strong character, and CW's version of the character is kind of not what I was expecting. The 70s TV version was more of what to expect from the books, I think. Yeah, I've covered a few episodes of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew from the 70s on this channel. I meant to cover episodes of the 90s version, but I haven't yet. And I actually need to reevaluate the 70s version too. But yeah, I think Nancy Drew, like, the way that Nancy Drew is portrayed throughout the decades definitely says a lot about, how do I say this? Like, I've always felt like the way Nancy Drew as a character evolves throughout the story in the decades, like the way that she's portrayed from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and then, like, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like, you can see, like, a difference in the way that, like, feminism is kind of perceived. Like, not to be too deep, it's a Nancy Drew book, but, like, I forgot the 90s version exists sometimes. I did too. Somebody reminded me of it, and I was like, that is a thing that exists. I should do a video about that. Which, if you've been around the channel, you know that my comments are a lot of people being like, hey, you remember this thing exists? And I'm like, I didn't remember that exists, but now I want to talk about it for an hour straight. Dumb question, but how many incarnations, adaptations are there of Nancy Drew? That's not a dumb question. I actually am not sure. It depends on, like, if you mean like TV or movie adaptations, I know of 3 different movie adaptations and 3 different TV show adaptations. Actually, no, there actually was in the 1930s, so just a few years after the book started being published, they started making movies with starring Bonita Granville, which is what this poster is back here. I don't know if anybody can actually see it. Let's see if I can. This is the poster that I have hung up on the wall back here. It's fallen off multiple times. There's dust everywhere, like... It's just, yeah. I've actually never seen this movie, so the fact that I have the poster up, I was just thinking about it the other day. I'm like, what if the movie sucks? Like, I love this poster. I love the way Nancy, like, the way that Nancy looks on this poster. I think Bonita was a great Nancy, and I've always loved the aesthetic of this poster, but I've never seen the movie, and I've been planning to do a video on it for forever, and I'm like, but what if I hate the movie, right? Do I have to, will I replace the poster? Maybe I should. Let's see if I can get it back on the this. Oh god, I'm gonna struggle. Yeah, these movies are so funny because they came out like right after the book was the first books were published, and it's just like, wow, that's a like, do I read the book or wait for the movie situation? I didn't know we had that for Nancy Drew. Please do the movie. Yeah, I've been meaning to. I've actually... There we go. Stay. Okay. I think I got it. I've actually... Technically, these streams, you're kind of witnessing like a new record set on the channel because I've never covered anything from the 1930s before these streams, so... This is technically, right now, the oldest thing I've ever talked about on this channel. I'm gonna need to start a 1930s playlist, because I have decades playlists, so... Yeah. But yeah, I think the movies will be fun videos. There's several of them. And I previewed, like, the very, very beginning of one, like, a while ago now. Because they're on YouTube. You can look them up. They also made Hardy Boys movies around the same time. But yeah. Good times. I'm gonna start reading the book in just a second, but I was just kind of making sure that everybody's in and orientated. Or that's not a word. You know what I mean. This stream is going off to a great start. I also have tea, by the way. Just like last night, it is not gin. It is English breakfast tea. And I have a big mug of it, because I'm sure I'm gonna start losing my voice about 2 hours into this stream. Hey, Danielle! Sorry I can't stay, but I hope all is well with everyone. That's totally fine. Thank you for dropping in and saying hi. Danielle's been watching the channel for a long time. She's the one that recommended I cover Little Shop of Horrors, so let's thank her for that, because I actually really love the way that video came out. That was a lot of fun to do. Tea. It's tea, I promise. If it was alcohol, I would tell you. I'm very not shy about when I'm drinking. Monetization be damned. It's tea, YouTube. It's tea. Oh my god. If everybody... Yeah, I invite everybody to get a drink. And settle in. And we're just gonna... read. Thank you, Danielle. I love that film. Yeah, that film is so fun, isn't it? It's just so... There's really nothing like Little Shop of Horrors. It's just... It's one of those few... musical adaptations that actually is well adapted, in my opinion, from the stage to the screen. We're all sat on the floor looking up at you, ready for the reading. Yeah, it's like, I feel like I'm doing like those like reading circles at the library. Didn't even go to those as a kid, where like somebody comes in and they're like, today we're gonna read, you know, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, which was one of my favorite books for a while when I was little. I actually did. I ran back in the day. I ran an after school reading program in my neighborhood, and yeah, this is bringing back memories. I used to love to read. Oh, what are they? Like, there were the Berenstain Bear books, obviously, but then like there were middle grade Berenstain Bear books that were like short chapter books, and that's what I would like bring for like the kids that were too old for like the original Berenstain Bear books, because I love the Berenstain Bears. Anyway, so talking about this book, where we left off was so Nancy saved a little girl's life, found out that her family was supposed to inherit money from a really chill old guy, and then they didn't, and then she met another pair of well, they weren't relatives, but, you know, really close friends who were also supposed to be helped out by this guy, and they need money, and they didn't get money, and then, Nancy was trying to figure out about the will, and if a second one exists, because the super rich people that inherited all the money are the worst. We hate them. We all hate them. We're pretty sure that the girls bullied Nancy in high school, and we don't want them to get nice things, I guess. Or they have nice things. They don't need more nice things. I guess that's where we are. And where we left off, Nancy was accidentally, but totally not accidentally, eavesdropping on their conversation because she heard them talk about the will. And that's where we left off. She's about to just do some sleuthing. Oh, and the singing expert just stared at Nancy for a good 3 solid minutes in silence. Yeah, that happened. So Nancy Drew went to this guy who's like a singing coach and was like, this girl, you know, she really has all this talent. Could you maybe hear her sing? And it says he stared at Nancy for several minutes before answering. So Nancy says, hey, could you listen to my friend sing? And then the guy just stares at her for like what I think must be like 3 or 4 minutes. Which had to have been the most terrifyingly awkward minutes of Nancy Drew's life. No? Yeah, I think we're caught up. I think that's the by and by of where we are. Yeah, I'm just gonna start reading from chapter 7. It's called The Angry Dog, which could literally mean anything. I have, you never know. Like, Nancy might get eaten by a giant, like, Rottweiler in the next scene. Anything could happen. It's been a wild ride so far. Okay. Chapter 7, The Angry Dog. With the instinct of a detective who dared not miss a clue, Nancy deliberately moved closer to the bench on which the Topham girls were seated. Just kind of snuck over stealthily, I think. If there should be another will, I'm afraid we'll be out of luck. The words in Ada's nasal voice came clearly to Nancy. Side note, I'm sorry. When they said she had a nasal voice, all I'm picturing now is that girl from Hannah Montana, you know, the friend, like the heiress friend that has the really nasally voice. She's always like, Hannah. That's what I'm picturing. Nancy dies in the first book of the series. Cool. Yeah, all the other books are her ghost solving mysteries. I hope that's not a spoiler for anybody. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'm gonna picture now. I'm gonna picture both of the Topham sisters as just duplicates of that girl from Hannah Montana. We've already established that her dad, Carson Drew, is legal. So we're casting this book as we go along. Isabel's reply was so low in tone that the young sleuth could just manage to catch the words, well, I, for one, don't believe Josiah Crowley ever made a later will. She gave a low laugh. Mother watched him like a hawk. Poor Josiah. Or thought she did, Isabel retorted. The old man got out of her clutches several times, don't forget. Yes, and what's worse, I'm sure Nancy Drew thinks he made a later will. That's why she's taking such an interest in those Hoover girls. They're really obsessed with Nancy and they don't notice she's right there. I actually saw them go into Mr. Drew's office yesterday, and it wasn't to deliver eggs. If Nancy gets her father interested, it might dig up another will. Oh, how I hate that interfering girl. At this, Nancy could barely refrain from laughing, so the Tophams were concerned about the existence of a second will. With bated breath, she listened further. You're such a worrywart, Ada. You can't trust Dad and Mother to take care of things no matter what happens. Isabel commented dryly. They won't let that pile of money get away from us. It's ours by right, anyhow. You've got something there, Ada conceded. We should have old Josiah's money after supporting him and putting up with him for 3 years. That was pretty clever of Mother, never accepting any board money from Josiah Crowley. The conversation ended, and Isabel and Ada arose from the bench and walked away. Nancy waited until they were out of sight, then emerged from her hiding place. Seating herself on the bench vacated by the Topham sisters, Nancy mulled over the remarks she had just overheard. There's no doubt in my mind now that if there is a later will, the Tophams haven't destroyed it. How thrilling, but where can it be? Nancy realized that to find a will was going to be a real challenge, and I'd better hurry up before the Tophams stumble upon it. For another 10 minutes, Nancy sat lost in thought, sifting all the facts she had gleaned so far. There must be some clue I've overlooked, she told herself. Suddenly, with a cry of delight, she sprang to her feet. Why didn't I think of that before? The Hoover girls and the Turners aren't the only ones who should have figured out this will. There are other relatives of Mr. Crowley who have filed a claim. I wonder who they are. If I could only talk with them, I might pick up a clue. Immediately, Nancy set off for her father's office. He was engaged in an important conference when she arrived, and she had to wait 10 minutes before being admitted into the inner office. I feel like, for a second, I thought she was going to burst in the door like Buddy the Elf style, and just be like, I don't care what you're talking about, Dad. This is more important. Now what? Mr. Drew asked, smiling as she burst in upon him. Have you solved the mystery, or is your purse in need of a little change? Damn. Nancy's cheeks were flushed, and her eyes danced with excitement. Don't tease me, she protested. I need some information. At your service, Nancy. The young sleuth poured out the story of the Topham sisters' conversation in the park and told him of her own conclusion. Mr. Drew listened with intent until she had finished. Excellent deducing, he praised his daughter. I'm afraid, though, I can't help you obtain the relatives' names. I don't know any of them. Nancy looked disappointed. Oh, dear, she sighed. And I'm so anxious to find out right away. If I delay even a single day, then the Tophams may locate that other will and destroy it. The next instant, her face brightened. I know. I'll drive out and see the Turner sisters. They might be able to tell me who the other relatives are. Nancy rose and headed for the door. Just a minute, said the lawyer. I wonder if you realize just what you're getting into, Nancy. What do you mean? Only this. Detective work isn't always the safest occupation in which to engage. I happen to know that Richard Topham is unpleasant when cross. If you do find out anything which may frustrate him, the entire Topham family could make things extremely difficult for you. I'm not afraid of them, Dad. Good, Mr. Drew exclaimed. I was hoping you would say that. I'm glad you have the courage of your convictions, but I didn't want you to march off into battle without a knowledge of what you might be up against. Battle? Yes, the Tophams won't give up the fortune without a bitter struggle. However, if they attempt to make a serious trouble, I promise I will deal with them myself. And if I do find the will, I'll take the matter into court. Oh, thank you. There's no one like you in all the world, Dad. After leaving her father's office, Nancy went directly home to get her car. So she was walking all day. Okay. When she told Hannah Gruen her plans, the housekeeper warned, don't become so deeply involved in this matter, dear. In your zeal to help other people, you may forget to be on your guard. I promise to be as careful as a pussycat walking up a slippery roof. It's an interesting analogy, but all right. Nancy assured the housekeeper with a grin and left the house. Quickly backing her car from the garage, she set off in the direction of the Turner home. The miles seemed to melt away as Nancy's thoughts raced from one idea to another. Before the young sleuth knew it, she had reached the house. Hi, Judy, she called to the little girl who was playing in the yard with a midget badminton set. Weird phrasing from 1930 once again. The child looked very cunning in a pink playsuit. The hand-embroidered teddy bears on it were surely the work of her loving aunts. Hi, Nancy, I'm glad you came. Now we'll have somebody to play with, Judy said, running up to the visitor. Obligingly, Nancy took a racket and batted the feathered shuttlecock towards the child. Hit the birdie, she called. This child is 5 years old. Judy missed but picked up the shuttlecock and whammed it nicely across the net. Nancy hit the back, and this time the little girl caught the birdie on her racket and sent it over. The game went on for several minutes, with Judy crying out in delight. You're the bestest batter I ever played with, Nancy, she declared. After 10 minutes of play, Nancy said, Let's go into the house now, Judy. I want to talk to your aunties. Judy skipped ahead and announced her new playmate's arrival. Hello, Nancy, the woman said as she entered the living room. We were watching the game from a window, Mary Turner said. This is a real thrill for Judy. Edna and I were very poor at hitting the birdie. It was lots of fun, Nancy replied. I'm glad to see you all again. She now asked whether the police had located the thieves who had taken the silver heirlooms from the house. Not yet, Mary answered. And what's worse, we found that several other pieces had been taken too. What a shame, Nancy exclaimed, but I'm sure the stolen articles will be found. Then she added, I came here on a particular mission. Yes? Your story about Mr. Josiah intrigued me. Then the other day, I met two girls, Grace and Allison Hoover, who told me a similar promise from him regarding the will. How amazing, Edna Turner exclaimed. I heard Josiah mentioned the Hoovers and Allison's... I'm sorry, I've lost my place. How amazing, Edna Turner exclaimed. I heard Josiah mention the Hoovers and Allison's beautiful voice. Dad and I have become very much interested in the case and are inclined to agree with you and the Hoovers that Mr. Crowley may have written another will shortly before his death and hidden it someplace. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if such a will could be found, Mary exclaimed. It might mean all the difference in the world to Judy's future. What I want to do, Nancy went on, is talk to as many of Mr. Crowley's relatives as I can find. Someplace I may pick up a clue to where a more recent will is hidden. Tell me, do any of the other relatives live around here? Yes, 3 that I can think of, Edna answered. She went on to say that 2 cousins who had never married lived on a farm just outside Titusville. Their names are Fred and William Matthews. Suddenly the Turner sisters blushed a deep pink. They glanced at each other, then back at Nancy. Finally, Edna said, Many years ago, Fred proposed to Mary and William to me, and we came near accepting. But just at that time, we had the great tragedy in the family and took Judy's mother to rear, so we decided not to marry. An embarrassing pause was broken by Judy. Someday, my aunties are going to give me one of my mother's dollies, Nancy. Isn't that nice? It certainly is, Nancy agreed, and you must be sure to show it to me. Then she asked the sisters, what relation are the Matthews to Mr. Crowley? First cousins on his mother's side. Do you think they would mind asking them some questions even though I'm a stranger? Not at all, Mary replied. They're very fine gentlemen. And tell them Mary and I sent you, Edna added. How far is Titusville from here? Nancy inquired. Oh, not more than 5 miles on Route 10A. You could drive there in a few minutes. You like how I just said 10A, like I've never said numbers or letters before? It's on the way to Masonville, Nancy. Won't you stay and have lunch with us? Eager to continue the work, the young sleuth was about to refuse, but Judy put in an invitation also. Please, oh please, Nancy, and while my aunties are fixing it, you and I can play badminton. All right, Nancy agreed, and thank you very much. It was nearly 2 o'clock when she finally was ready to depart. Oh, Mary, said Edna, we forgot to tell Nancy about Josiah's wife's cousin. A distant relation. Mrs. Abby Rowan. She'd be apt to know more about the will than anyone else. That's right. You really should call on her, Nancy. She took care of Josiah one time when he was sick, and he thought the world of her. He often declared he intended to leave her something. She's a widow, and she has very little. This guy was going to leave money to everybody except the Tophams, I think. Even a few $1,000s would mean a lot to her, Edna added. Abby must be over 80 years of age and growing forgetful. She has no children, and there's no one to look after her. Oh, that's so sad. Where shall I find Mrs. Rowan? Nancy asked, hoping it was not far away. Abby lives on the West Lake Road, Edna responded. It's a good many miles from here. Then I shan't have time to go there today, the young sleuth said, but I'll surely see her as soon as I can. And now I must be going. Nancy thanked them, and the Turner sisters said goodbye, but before she could leave, Judy insisted upon showing her how she could jump rope and do all kinds of dancing steps with a hoop on the lawn. Judy entertains us all the time, Mary remarked. We believe she's very talented. Nancy thought so too. As she drove off again, she hoped that the money would become available for a very special education for Judy. After Nancy had gone 5 miles along the designated route, she began to watch the mailboxes. Soon she noticed one which bore the name Matthews. The farmhouse stood back a distance from the road and had a wide sweep of a lawn in front of it. Near the house, a man was riding a smaller tractor, mowing the grass. He was not moving the grass. He was mowing the grass. I'm sorry. Nancy drove down the narrow lane which led into the grounds and stopped opposite the spot where the man was working. The man's back was toward her, and he apparently had not heard the car above the noise of the tractor, so she waited. Looking towards the house, Nancy suddenly saw a sight that appalled her. Wedged between 2 stones of a broken wall was a police dog puppy, whining pitifully. Nancy dashed forward and released the little animal. As it continued to whimper, she cuddled the pup in her arms and began to examine its paws. Is this the angry dog that the whole chapter is named after? This is a tiny little puppy. Why, you poor thing, Nancy said, seeing a tear in the flesh of one hind leg. This must be taken care of right away. She decided to carry the puppy over to the man on the mower. As Nancy walked across the lane, she suddenly heard an angry growl near her. There it is. Looking back, she saw a huge police dog, evidently the pup's mother, bounding toward her. It's all right, Nancy called soothingly to the dog. I'm not going to take your baby away. She took 2 more strides, but got no further. With a fierce snarl, the dog leaped onto Nancy, knocking her flat. End of chapter. Oh my god, that was a chapter. My sad attempt at mimicking the wording. Yeah, the wording in this book is so old-timey, and there's a couple things where it's like, ooh, that's real outdated. That's a weird way to say that, sir. Remember the 2007 movie? Yeah, I think that's the one with Emma Roberts. I think that's the one. See, I'm reading back. I'm catching back up with the chat. Well, Nancy did get completely attacked, so... Yes, I'm live. I'm live again. I'm doing these chill streams and seeing how it goes. This is interactive. It is indeed interactive. My videos are not, like, heavily edited, but it is nice to get your feedback in real time. Could her dad not leave more paperwork out for Nancy to accidentally read again? I know, right? Her dad is so chill, and I love him. We get to see Avery fidget with pages. I'm sorry, if just a heads up, that's gonna keep happening. I don't know when I'm doing it. It's just... Yeah, it's a tiny badminton set, but it is weird phrasing. Like, they don't mean any harm by it, but it is strange, and it's like, oh, again, 100-year-old book. I'm gonna turn my little phone, which is being used as second monitor, in case that's bothering anybody. Yeah, the poor little birdie. It's obviously not sentient, but when they call it a birdie, and I always, ever since childhood, was like, but you hit it. You can't call it a birdie. 2 cousins that had never married. Thank you. I thought that too, and I didn't say anything because I thought it might just be me. They say that like it's a condition of being cousins or something. Shudder. It's it's weird. It's Avery's first time reading. She's doing well. I'm sorry. I'm not a bad reader. Like, I've been reading since I was very young. I'm just still not used to being live, and I get very, like, nervous that I'm gonna, like, say something wrong, and then I trip my brain up, and then I say things wrong. Being live adds an extra layer of complexity. Wait, I missed the stream brain is totally thing. Yeah, I'm noticing that. $1,000 in 1930s is worth 16K in today's money. Thank you. I'm glad somebody's doing the conversion today. See, this is the benefit of being live. Usually I have to do the conversion and then tell you guys and hope that you're not rolling your eyes at me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the chat. Judy reminds me so much of my sister when she was younger. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, Judy seems like the cutest kid. When this book opened with her almost dying, all of us collectively gasped. So the real angry dog was the angry dog in the end. Who knew? Yep. The real angry dogs were the friends we made along the way. Moving the grass also sounds perfectly feasible. I mean, I guess if he was, like, shoveling dirt, he would technically be, like, moving the grass, but that was not what he was doing. He was mowing the grass. My brain just was like, no, he is moving the grass now. Say things wrong first and your brain will autocorrect to the right things. Smart, yeah. Back-to-back streams is a treat. I'm glad you guys like these streams. I wanted to keep plugging along through this book because I don't know why when I did the first stream, I was like, oh, we will read the whole book on stream. That's not going to be that hard. And then we read 6 chapters in 2.5 hours, and I was like, oh, I don't know how time management works. I guess that's another thing of having ADHD. It's just like, time is a social construct. Tapping on the book is also a thing that I'm going to keep doing. Also, poor Josiah Crowley. Can we talk about how this is basically elder abuse that they're describing in the beginning? They're like, yeah, we kept an eye on him and we over-controlled every part of his life, all for his money. We just wanted his money. That is terrifying. It's so sad. Jeez. Next chapter. How many chapters? I always look ahead to see how many pages are in each chapter, just so that I know what I'm signing up for. We're on page 69, nice. And we are reading to page 77. 8 pages. The page fidgeting is endearing. Thank you. Lesson is don't have money. No one can take advantage of you that way. Yeah, well, every millennial and Gen Z will have it together. Is it Toppers? The Tophams. That's the name of the really sketchy family. The rich family that everybody hates. It's spelled like Topham. Tophams. Live streams are always a blast to be a part of. I've learned after following a few live streamers over the years, having a steady schedule, like streaming every Friday night or whatever, really helps. Yeah, I probably should start up like a schedule. I'm pretty much for right now just doing these like kind of chill streams in between when I'm not like actively editing a video. It'll only take a year to get through this sweet book. Yeah, well, actually we're just reading, this is 3 books in one. I know it's confusing. So, like, the actual book that we're reading is only 180 pages, and we're already almost 70 pages in. So not quite halfway, but, like, it's not as daunting as it looks. Like, my brother tuned into the stream briefly last night and was just like, he's like, I heard you say, it's not that long of a book, and then I see that you're holding a massive book. I'm like, look, it's 3. We're only reading the 1, and the 1 book only goes to about, here. Right here is where the book that we're reading ends. So, like, it's not that bad. Sell someone's organs for money, too. That's so terrifying. Oh my gosh. All right. I think we've... Looks like you were about to try to read through a phone book. Yeah, no, this is 3 books together. It's The Secret of the Old Clock, The Bungalow Mystery, and The Mystery in the 99 Steps. We can obviously read these on later streams if it's something that people are interested in, but right now we're just worried about Secret of the Old Clock, which is actually the book that is The cover of this book is the cover of the Secret of the Clock book. It's confusing. I've had this book forever. It's about to be a marathon stream. Yeah, we're not going to do another, no 12-hour streams planned for the near future. That was a lot of fun, and I'm definitely going to do one again, but I think we need some intermittent, shorter streams in between. Yeah, I'm just going to jump into the next chapter. I think we're ready. Educated guess, the second will be in the clock. That is a very... I'm pretty sure you're correct. I don't fully remember, because I have not read this book in... Honestly, I read this book more recently than you'd think. Probably like 2 or 3 years ago. But like... Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly where we're going. I don't think that's a spoiler to say. If it is, I'm sorry for not giving a spoiler warning. Ready to rock some sweet book listening. Yay! Alright, we're going into chapter 8. Chapter 8 is called A Forgotten Secret. Or the clue to the will be in the clock. It'll be one of those two things. As you can see, this picture depicts Nancy tinkering with this clock to get it open, so obviously that clock is going to have something important in it. Hot damn, I'm a detective. Yep. Yeah. It's like, anybody who watches Monk, you know that one episode where, like, he's trying to read himself to sleep, and all he does is he reads the first page, and then reads the last page. It's like, I knew it. Alright. Alright, let's put on our sleuthing glasses again. Okay. Chapter 8, A Forgotten Secret. Nancy screamed for help, hoping to attract the farmer's attention. He's right there, isn't he? She expected momentarily to be bitten by the angry dog, but to her great relief, the animal did not harm her. The young sleuth's sudden fall had caused the puppy to fly from her arms. With a leap, its mother was at its pup's side. She grabbed her baby by the back of its neck and trotted off toward the barn. Ooh, that was a narrow escape. Nancy took a deep breath as she got to her feet, brushed herself off, and ruefully surveyed a tear in her sweater. Not the sweater. Not that. By this time, the man on the tractor, having changed direction, saw the fracas? The fracas. I've never seen that word before. Fracas. I've never seen that word before. The ruckus. He saw the ruckus and came running. He apologized for the dog's actions, but Nancy said quickly, "It was my fault. I should have set the pup down. Its mother probably thought I was trying to dog nap her baby. Possibly. Never take a puppy away from a mother dog." Nancy explained why she had picked up the little animal, and the farmer said he would look at the cut later. But what if it's actively bleeding? "I'm glad you weren't hurt," he added. "Thanks for being such a good scout about it. Did you come to see me or my brother?" he asked. "I'm Fred Matthews." Nancy gave her name and added that she was acquainted with the Turner sisters and others who had been told they would benefit under Josiah Crowley's will. "My dad, the lawyer Carson Drew, and I are working on the case. We believe there might have been a later will that the one presented by Mr. Topham has, and we'd like to find it." She's really given this speech to, like, how many people now? Like 4 people? So far, what we've read is, like, her going to a place and asking about the will, and then going to a place and asking about the will. "And you came to see if William and I could give you a clue?" Fred's bright blue eyes sparkled boyishly. "That's right, Mr. Matthews. Also, did Mr. Crowley ever tell you he was going to leave you some money?" "Indeed he did." At this moment, another man came from the house, and Fred introduced him as his brother, William. Both were tall, spare, and strong-muscled. Though their hair was gray, the men's faces were youthful and unwrinkled. "Let's sit down under a tree here and discuss this," Fred suggested, as they did in the 1930s, I guess. Fred suggested leading the way to a group of rustic chairs. He told William and Nancy He told William of Nancy's request and then asked him, did Cousin Josiah ever give you any idea he'd made a will in which we were not beneficiaries? I know she just said they sat down in chairs, but now I'm just picturing them, like, just sitting in the grass, like, haha, it's 1930 and we don't need chairs. No, I thought one would come to light when he died. To tell you the truth, Miss Drew, Fred and I were thunderstruck at the will, which left everything to the Tophams. That wasn't what Cousin Josiah led us to believe. It certainly wasn't, Fred spoke up. But I guess William and I counted our chickens before they were hatched. We just about make ends meet here with our small fruit farm. Help and equipment cost such a lot, though. One thing we've always wanted to do, but couldn't afford, was to travel. We thought we'd use the money from Cousin Josiah to do that. But our dream bubble burst, said William. No trips for us. My brain just thought, were there even planes in the 1930s? And then I was like, yes, there were planes. They weren't as frequently used, but they were there. Nancy smiled. Don't give up hope yet. Dad and I haven't. She was disappointed that the brothers could offer her no clues about a place to look for another will. A little while later, she left the farm and returned home. No new evidence, she told her father. Let's hope Mrs. Abby Rowan has some. Early the next morning, she set off for the elderly woman's home. And reached her destination by asking directions of people living along West Lake Road. This must be Abby Rowan's house, Nancy told herself. It fits the description. She climbed out of the car and stood before the one-story frame building, which was badly in need of paint and repair. The yard around it was overgrown with weeds, and the picket fence enclosing the cottage sagged dejectedly. I need more tea. The place looks deserted, Nancy mused, but I'll see if Mrs. Rowan is at home. Nancy made her way up the scraggly path to the house and rapped on the front door. There was no response. After a moment, she knocked again. This time, in a muffled voice, called, "Who's there? If you're a peddler, I don't want anything." "I'm not selling anything," Nancy called out reassuringly. "Won't you let me in, please?" There was a long silence, then the quavering voice replied, "I can't open the door. I've hurt myself and I can't walk." Oh no. Oh no. Nancy hesitated an instant before pushing open the door. As she stepped into the dreary living room, she saw a frail figure on the couch. Abby Rowan lay huddled under an old shawl, her withered face drawn with pain. I feel so bad for this person that does not exist. She's living in a little cottage all by herself. She's hurt herself and she cannot walk. "I am Nancy Drew, and I've come to help you, Mrs. Rowan." The old lady turned her head and regarded Nancy with a state of wonder. "You've come to help me?" she repeated unbelievingly. "I didn't think anyone would ever bother about old Abby again." Oh no, we need to protect Abby. We need to protect Mrs. Abby Rowan at all costs. "Here, let me arrange the pillows for you." Gently, Nancy moved the old woman into a more comfortable position. "Yesterday, I fell down the cellar stairs," Mrs. Rowan explained. "I hurt my hip and sprained my ankle." "Have you had a doctor?" Nancy asked in astonishment. "No," Abby Rowan sighed. "Not a soul has been here, and I couldn't get in touch with anybody. I have no telephone." "Can you walk at all?" Nancy asked. "A little." "Then your hip isn't broken," Nancy said in relief. "Let me see your ankle." "Oh my, it's swollen. I'll bandage it for you." "There's a clean cloth in the closet in the kitchen," Abby told her. "I haven't any regular bandage." "You really should have a doctor," Nancy remarked. "Let me drive you to one." "I can't afford it," the old woman murmured. The old woman murmured. "My pension check hasn't come, and it's too small anyway." That is such an American experience. I hate how much of an experience that still is. Jesus. "Let me pay the doctor," Nancy offered. Abby Rowan shook her head stubbornly. "I will not take charity. I'd rather die first." "Well, if you insist upon not having a doctor, I'm going to the nearest drugstore to get you some bandaging and a few other things," Nancy told her. "But before I go, I'll make you a cup of tea." "There's no tea in the house." This poor lady can't catch a break. Then I'll get a box. What else do you need? I need most everything, but I can't afford anything right now. You might get me some tea and a loaf of bread. That's enough. You'll find the money in the jar in the cupboard. It's not very much, but it's all I have. I'll be back in a few minutes, Nancy promised. She stopped in the kitchen long enough to examine the cupboards. With the exception of a little flour and sugar and a can of soup, there appeared to be nothing in the house to eat. Oh. Nancy found that the money jar contained less than $5. I'll not take any of it, she decided. Quietly, the young sleuth slipped out of the back door. She drove quickly to the nearest store and ordered a stock of groceries. Then she stopped at a drugstore and purchased the bandages and liniment. Reaching the cottage, she carried the supplies inside and adeptly set about making Abby Rowan more comfortable. She bathed the swollen ankle and bound it neatly with the antiseptic bandage. It feels better already, Mrs. Rowan told her gratefully. I don't know what would have happened to me if you hadn't come. Oh, someone would have dropped in, said Nancy cheerfully. She went to the kitchen, and in a short while had prepared tea and a light lunch for the elderly woman. As Abby Rowan ate the nourishing meal, Nancy was gratified to observe that almost immediately her patient became more cheerful and seemed to gain strength. She sat up on the couch and appeared eager to talk with Nancy. There aren't many folks willing to come in and help an old lady. If Josiah Crowley had lived, things would have been different, she declared. I could have paid someone to look after me. It's strange that he didn't provide for you in his will, Nancy replied quietly. She did not wish to excite the woman by telling her her real mission, yet Nancy hoped that she might lead her tactfully into a discussion of Josiah Crowley's affairs without raising hopes which might never be realized. It's my opinion that Josiah did provide for me, Mrs. Rowan returned emphatically. Many a time he said to me, Abby, you'll never need to worry. When I'm gone, you'll be well taken care of by all my will. Then everything was left to the Tophams, Nancy encouraged her to proceed. That was according to the first will, Abby Rowan stated. Abby Rowan knows something. You mean there's another will? Nancy inquired eagerly. Of course. Why, I saw that will with my own eyes. You saw it? Nancy gasped. The old woman nodded gravely. Mind, I didn't see what was in the will. One day Josiah came to call and give me some money. Right off, I noticed he had a bunch of papers in his hand. I noticed... Abby, he said, I've made a new will. I didn't bother with a lawyer. I wrote it myself. Again, talked about this last night. That has to be a bad idea. How long ago was that? Nancy asked quickly. Let me see. Abby Rowan frowned thoughtfully. I can't remember the exact date. It was this past spring. Anyway, Josiah hinted that he'd done well by me. But Josiah, I said, are you sure it's legal to write it yourself? Of course it is, he said. A lawyer told me it was all right, just so long as I wrote it myself and signed it. But I did have it witnessed. Do you know who witnessed the will? Nancy broke in. No, he didn't say. Haven't you any idea what became of the will? Nancy asked hopefully. Well, I remember Josiah did say something about putting it where nobody could get it unless they had legal authority, but I really don't know what became of it. Are you certain that was all Mr. Crowley said? Nancy inquired gently. She recalled the Turners saying that Abby had become forgetful. The elderly woman shook her head and sighed. Many a night I've lain awake trying to think what else he did say about where he would put the will. I just can't recollect. Try to think, Nancy begged. I can't remember, Abby Rowan murmured hopelessly. I've tried and tried. She leaned against the cushions and closed her eyes, as though the effort had exhausted her. At that very moment, the clock on the mantel chimed 12. Abby's eyes fluttered open, and an odd expression passed over her face. For an instant, she stared straight before her, then slowly turned her head and fastened her eyes on the clock. It is The Secret of the Old Clock, by the way. So, Nancy is a nurse. I feel really bad for Abby. Poor Nancy's just trying to figure out how to fix the old school clocks for daylight savings. Yeah, she's just setting the clock back. This has nothing to do with the story. Not the sweater. I feel so bad. It was probably her favorite sweater, too. Do you guys hear that here in America we're like doing away with daylight savings time, right? Or like they voted on doing away with daylight savings unanimously, and allegedly that's gonna start next year. The S is silent. Okay, apparently I have no idea. I have no idea what words are. Yes, we have no wills. We have no wills today. Grass is stating properties. They haven't such in the modern day. Yeah. I've fallen and I can't get up. That's what I thought of too. And I felt so bad. Hey, Laser125, I'm good. How are you? Yeah, poor Abby, man. Poor everyone in more ways than one. And to heck with the Tophams. Yeah, that's a pretty good summary of what's going on. Oh, no. No, Abby's got life. Abby's got life left to live. I believe in Abby. Sadly, 100 years later, there has not been that much change. At least not in the American medical system. Hopefully Abby's got some Girl Scout cookies in the freezer. Yeah. $5 then is $80 today. That's still like a depressingly little amount of money if that's all the money you have, but wow, inflation, man. Inflation is insane. As if Abby could afford ice brought to the house. Yeah, probably. You probably got something there. All I'm thinking of is that Icebox episode that I covered with Natasha of Beyond Belief. We're still laughing about that to this day. The will is not imaginary after all. How depressing would this be if Nancy's first mystery is just like, yeah, it was a fool's errand the entire time. Dun dun dun. They should stop the whole daylight savings thing, because yeah, what's the point? Yeah, exactly. It's like you forget every single time, and it's just annoying. Always feels like the days are way too short. Yeah, like when we fall back and you like gain an hour, that's the only time where it's like, oh, I feel like I have energy. I've got this whole extra hour, even though you don't, but like it feels like you do. But then like in spring, when we spring forward and lose the hour, it's like the worst thing in the world. Yeah, the twist is that there is no will. The real will was the friends Nancy made along the way. There's a will, I promise. It'll be really fun to play Secret of the Old Clock, the game, when I do that stream. That's going to be a lot of fun, because I love that game. And it, like, for those of us who have read the book, they obviously take a lot of liberties and they kind of, like, combine. I was talking about this last night on stream, but, like, they combine elements of this story with some smaller elements from a couple other books in the Nancy Drew series. But, like, once you, like, start to see characters, it's really funny to, like, have an actual face. In the game, though, Mr. Topham doesn't have a family. He's just a fake psychic that lives in Josiah's house. No lie. Yeah, having devices that automatically adjust the clock is fine. We have a weird amount of, like, non-digital clocks in our house, though, so we always are, like, going around and, like, changing the clocks every single 6 months, I guess. Gaming stream, sign me up twice. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, I don't know, some of you might have already heard this. It's like an unofficial announcement, but I'm planning on doing it really soon. If anybody's seen on my channel, I've done a couple of video commentary videos on a couple of the early Nancy Drew PC games. I did one for Secrets Can Kill and one for Stay Tuned for Danger, and I'm gonna do another video about Message in a Haunted Mansion. And after I do that video, I'm gonna start doing streams where I stream like for like all of the games in order, like one stream at a time. So like the first game and then another stream is the second game and so on until you get through. There's like 30 something games. So that's going to be like a very, long standing project over the course of a while on the channel, but I'm really excited about that. That's been a dream of mine for forever. I grew up watching Michael Gray play all those games back in the early days of YouTube, and I just I've always wanted to play those games on YouTube. So that'll be really fun. Sounds like a blast. I hope so. I love those games. They're puzzle games, and you get to play as Nancy, and they're so fun. I can't wait to play them live on stream because even though I've covered some of them, and done commentary about them as an overview, and I'm gonna do another one for Message in a Haunted Mansion, I'm sure it's gonna be fun to have the chat be able to help me in real time solve puzzles and stuff. So I think that's gonna be fun. You're the only one who likes daylight savings time. I mean, I'm sure some people do. It's 10 a.m. where you are. Yeah, it's yeah. It's what, almost 8 here? It's 8:01 where I am in Atlanta. But yeah, that's the plan as far as live streams go. That's gonna happen soon. And then obviously if we decide we like these reading streams, I can do more of these too. And I like the idea of just doing things that are chill for stream while I'm still kind of getting used to it. So getting used to the software. So far I don't think we have any technical difficulties tonight, knock on wood. Here, I'll knock on wood for everybody. No technical difficulties. Yeah. Yeah, daylight savings time is kind of a pain, but I guess it does have some purpose, I guess. 1 a.m. here, but it's the weekend. Yeah, happy Friday, everybody. It's Friday tonight. I don't know if anybody has any plans, but even if your plans are just to chill out and not work, that's good. It's always a fun plan. All right, I'm going to start the next chapter. We're on chapter 9. It is 10 pages long. It's already Saturday in Sydney. That's interesting. I always forget, not forget, but there's such a time difference between here and Sydney, so that's always funny for me to remember. All right, if everybody's ready, I can start chapter 9. Chapter 9, Helpful Disclosures. Nancy watched Abby Rowan intently as the mantel clock finished striking. The elderly woman's lips had begun to move. "The clock," she whispered. "That was it. The clock." Nancy gripped her arms on the chair excitedly. "Josiah Crowley hid the will in a clock?" she prompted. No, it wasn't that," Abby murmured, sighing again. "I know Josiah said something about a clock, but whatever it was, it slipped my mind." Silence descended over the room. Nancy was wondering what connection the timepiece could have with the missing will. Mrs. Rowan was staring at the clock, evidently still trying to probe her memory. Suddenly, she gave a low cry. "Ah! Is that what a low cry is? Ah!" I don't know what a low cry sounds like. "There! It came to me just like that." "What, Mrs. Rowan?" Nancy urged quietly, lest she startle the old woman into forgetfulness. "A notebook!" Nancy exclaimed triumphantly. Nancy's heart gave a leap, but she forced herself to say calmly, "Please tell me more about this notebook." "Well, one day, not long before he passed away, Josiah said to me, 'Abby, after I'm dead, if my last will isn't found, you can learn about it in this little book of mine.'" "Do you know what became of the notebook, Mrs. Rowan?" "Oh, dearie me, there goes my memory again. No, I don't." Although baffled, Nancy felt a growing conviction that the whereabouts of the Crowley will was definitely tied up with a clock of some kind. "You think, Nancy?" But she pondered. Why did the striking mantel clock remind Abby Rowan of the notebook? Impulsively, Nancy got up and went over to the mantel. She looked inside the glass front, and in the back, there were no papers inside. Returning to her chair, Nancy asked the elderly woman what became of the furnishings of the Crowley home when he gave it up. The Tophams got most everything. There must have been a family clock, Nancy mused, half to herself. A family clock? Abby repeated. Oh, yes, there was a clock. Were family clocks a thing back in the day? Can you describe it? It was just an ordinary mantle type. Something like mine, tall with a square face, the woman told Nancy. Only Josiah's was fancier, had some kind of moon on top. What became of the clock? Nancy questioned. I suppose the Tophams got it too. At last, Nancy, sure that she had done all she could for Abby, and that she had learned as much as possible for the present, rose to depart. After saying goodbye, she stopped at a neighboring house and asked the occupants to look in occasionally on the ailing woman. She's like, you've got to keep an eye on this poor lady. She needs help. I think maybe one of the county's visiting nurses should see Mrs. Rowan, she suggested. I'll phone the agency, the neighbor offered. Meanwhile, I'll go over myself. I'm so sorry I didn't know about Mrs. Rowan. As Nancy drove toward River Heights, she jubilantly reviewed the new facts in the case. Now, if I can only locate Mr. Crowley's notebook, or clock, or both. Nancy's brow knit in concentration. How would she go about tracking down the old timepiece? I guess, she concluded, if the Tophams do have the clock, I'll have to pay them a visit. While she did not relish the idea of calling on the unpleasant family, Nancy was determined to pursue every possible clue. I can just see Ada's and Isabel's expressions when I appear at the front door, Nancy thought wryly. Well, I'll think of some excuse to see them. She was still mulling over the problem when she pulled into the driveway of her home and headed for a familiar voice calling her name. Why, Helen Corning! Exclaimed Nancy, as a slim, attractive school friend of hers ran up. I haven't seen you for days. I've been busy lately, Helen explained, trying to sell 6 tickets for a charity ball, but I haven't had much luck. Would you like a couple? A sudden idea flashed into Nancy's mind. And at her friend's words, Helen, she said excitedly, I'll buy 2 of your tickets and sell the rest for you. The other girl stared in astonishment. Why, that's a wonderful offer, Nance, but... Nancy's eyes danced. I know you think I've lost my mind. I really mean it, though. Please, let me take the tickets. I can't tell you my reasons yet, except my cause is a worthy one. Helen looked relieved, but bewildered, and handed over the tickets. This is really a break for me, she said. Now I can leave for my aunt's Camp Avondale this evening, as I'd hoped. Anybody who played the game is having flashbacks. It's at Moon Lake. That's another game. That's really funny. Nancy Drew. And the Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake is the name of that game. It's at Moon Lake. I thought I'd never get off with those tickets unsold. Nancy smiled. Have a grand time, Helen, she said. How about coming along? It's not expensive and there's room for lots more girls. We'd have loads of fun. I'd love to, Nancy replied, but right now I can't get away. Maybe you can make it later, Helen suggested. If so, just zip on up. I'll be there for 2 weeks before the regular summer camp opens. The 2 friends chatted a little longer, then said goodbye. Nancy put the car away, then walked slowly toward her house, looking meditatively at the charity tickets in her hand. My brain needed a second. Those are to be my passport to the Topham stronghold. It was the following afternoon when Nancy approached the large, pretentious house belonging to the Tophams. I like how the narrator just doesn't miss a chance to throw shade. Bracing herself for what she realized would be a trying interview, Nancy mounted the steps and rang the doorbell. Here goes, she thought. I must be subtle in this maneuver to keep from arousing the Topham's suspicions. At that moment, a maid opened the door and, with a condescending look, waited for Nancy to state her mission. Will you please tell Mrs. Topham that Nancy Drew was calling, she requested. I'm selling tickets for a charity dance. It's one of the most important functions of the year in River Heights, Nancy added impressively. It seemed ages to the young sleuth before the maid returned and said that Madam would see her. Nancy was ushered into the living room, which was so bizarre in its decor, she was startled. Such an expensive hodgepodge, Nancy observed to herself sitting down. She glanced at the pink carpet, which to her clashed with the red window draperies and an indiscriminate assortment of period furniture mixed in with the modern. A haughty voice interrupted her thoughts. Well, what do you want, Nancy? Mrs. Topham said, as she sailed grandly into the room and seated herself opposite Nancy. Nice to see you too, ma'am. I'm selling, Nancy began pleasantly. Oh, if you're selling things, I'm not interested, the woman broke in rudely. I can't be handing out money to every solicitor who comes along. With difficulty, Nancy suppressed an angry retort to the cutting remark. Mrs. Topham, she said evenly, perhaps your maid didn't make it clear. I'm selling tickets to a charity ball, which will be one of the loveliest affairs in River Heights this year. Oh! A slight change came over Mrs. Topham's face. Nancy sensed that her words had struck a responsive chord. The woman was well known for her aspirations to be accepted by the best families in River Heights. Well, to Nancy's dismay, Mrs. Topham's response was cut off by the arrival of Ada and Isabel. The sisters entered the room but did not at first notice Nancy's presence. They were intently carrying on a disgruntled conversation. Really, Ada was complaining, I'm positive that woman snubbed us deliberately. Then she and Isabel caught sight of Nancy and stopped short. They stared coldly at the visitor. What are you doing here? Isabel asked with a patronizing air. Mrs. Topham answered her daughter's question. Nancy's selling tickets to a charity dance, dear. It's to be a very important affair, and I think it will be, beneficial for us to be present. Isabel tossed her head disdainfully. Don't waste your money, mother. Isabel's right, Ada chimed in. We don't want to go to a ball just anybody can go to. We only attend the most exclusive affairs. Absolutely, Isabel declared in her haughtiest tone. After all, Ada and I are very particular about the people we choose to meet. Mrs. Topham hesitated, evidently influenced by her daughter's argument. Nancy's heart sank, and she feared her cause was lost. She fully realized that Ada and Isabel would stay away from the dance just to spite her. As she debated what her next move should be, Richard Topham walked into the living room. He was a thin man with sparse graying hair. His manner was rather nervous. Mrs. Topham it's a big word. Give me a second. Perfunctorily introduced Nancy to her husband. I gather you have some tickets to dispose of, Miss Drew, he said without ceremony. How many? Why, 4, Nancy replied in some surprise. I'll take them all. Mr. Topham opened his wallet with a flourish and drew out a $100 bill. What is the conversion on $100? I could do the math, but it's not. If $5 is $80 in 1930, I could do that math, but I'm not going to. Here you are. Keep the change for your charity. His daughters gasped at his wife, exclaimed, Richard, have you lost your senses? All that money. Listen, Mr. Topham retorted bluntly. This donation will entitle us to have our names on the programs as patrons. With this remark, he slumped into a chair and buried himself in the financial section of the newspaper. His family stared at one another, but they knew that the matter was closed. They never dared disturb him when he was absorbed in the stock market reports. Nancy arose reluctantly. She still had not accomplished the real purpose of her visit, but she had no excuse for prolonging her stay. How could she find out about the Crowley clock? Was it the one on the mantelpiece? I must be going, she said. Then, looking at her wristwatch, she pretended that it had stopped and began to wind it. What time is it, please? There's a clock right in front of you, on the mantel, Ada said sharply. Rude. Nancy looked at the timepiece. So there it is, she remarked casually. Is it an heirloom, perhaps? The old Crowley clock I've heard so much about. The Tophams looked down... Mrs. Topham looked down her nose. I should say not. This is a far more expensive one. Isabel also rose to Nancy's bait. Cousin Josiah's old clock was a monstrosity. We wouldn't have it cluttering up... We wouldn't even have it cluttering up the attic. Nancy's hopes waned, but she asked quickly, "Oh, then you sold it?" "No," Ada spoke up contemptuously. "Who'd give any money for that piece of junk? We sent it up to our bungalow at Moon Lake." Convenient! Moon Lake! The words hit Nancy like a thunderbolt. Not only had the Topham girl given Nancy the very information she sought, but Helen Corning's invitation to Camp Avondale provided a valid reason to visit the resort. Now if she could only figure out how to see the old clock. As if Ada had read the visitor's thoughts, she said angrily, "We have some really fine pieces up at the cottage, Nancy. If you ever get up that way, drop in to see them. The caretaker will show you around." Was that a thing? Just like touring people's houses when they weren't there? It's like in Pride and Prejudice where they go to Mr. Darcy's house at Pemberley and they're just like, well, we'll tour this house, I guess. Like, that's strange. Can you imagine if we did that today? Thank you. Thank you so much for everything, Nancy said, trying hard to conceal her excitement. As the door closed behind her, Nancy grinned in anticipation. What luck, she told herself. Moon Lake, here I come. End of chapter. All right. Chapter 9 was pretty cool. There was so much shade. Clocks. Yeah, I don't know what a low... I don't know what that would sound like. A low cry. Not a high cry. 420 Blaze It cry. Yeah. Clocks have hands. To write a will, you need a hand. There's the connection. There you go. That RAM module I've been having issues with fell out of the damn socket again. Be a dear and yeah, exactly. It's like, oh no, my memory. And then, like, we just find out that there are cyborgs in the Nancy Drew universe. Abby's having a Dory moment. I feel like I personally have Dory moments just constantly. So, you know, I can't blame her that much. Would imagine family clocks were a thing. They'd shuffle them down in family lines, partially for sentiment, but also because clocks are expensive. That's a good point, yeah. Nowadays, it's not a big deal, but yeah, I'm sure it costs a lot of money. Take Abby to a vet. The way when you said that, it reminded me of, does anybody watch Schitt's Creek, where, you know, the episode where David's having a panic attack and there's no real doctor to bring him to because the town's so small, so they just bring him to Ted's veterinary clinic. Time after time. Now that song's gonna be in my head. Does anyone get the feeling that Nancy Drew is on one big giant fetch quest for half the book? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Everybody's like, hey, Nancy, go do this. Nancy needs to do that. Nancy, you gotta go do this. It honestly lends itself very well to first-person games. First-person adventure games. Because the games just send you on fetch quests. I have hiccups, I'm sorry. The game just sends you on fetch quests over and over and over again until you solve the mystery. It's very fun, but yeah, this works out very well for games. I'm losing my place in the comments. $100 is $1,600 today. Wow. So they're just like trying to be the Kardashians, the Tophams, huh? Like I feel like when they were describing like how ugly the house was, I feel like they would be the people that, like, if they were real and they were around in this decade, um, they'd be that family that like has the houses. You ever see like Moist Critical do that thing on stream where he's just like reviewing like the ugliest rich person houses he can find? Like I feel like it would be that. Round the Twist push boundaries on children's TV to be outrageous. Round the Twist has some wild episodes. Like it's great, but it's just like, oh my god, that first I remember watching that first episode, Skeleton on the Dunny, and just like being like, I have never seen a TV show like this before in my life. I've been missing out. Imagine dropping that on some tickets to some ball. Yeah, and two of the family members don't even want to go. Um, yeah, anticipation. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show. Do you know how many times when I just did the recent video that I did on Little Shop of Horrors, do you know how many times I accidentally said Little Rocky Horror Picture Show and had to like cut it out and switch it? And I was just like, I don't know why I keep saying one when I mean the other. I guess they just are both like camp movies. Schitt's Creek was a good show. Loved Chris Elliott's mayor character. Yeah, I love Schitt's Creek. It's very dry, but it's like a specific kind of humor, but I love it. Marker for the next bit of reading. No need to sound flustered when you read. You're doing great. Thank you. I think I just like when I trip up once, then I'm like more flustered. I need to just be like whatever. But yeah, I appreciate the encouragement. It's genuinely helpful. Yeah, Australians have like some of the funniest kid shows. Like I've no one else does family entertainment like Australia is what I've noticed. Hence why you guys have your own Australian media just has a whole playlist of its own on my channel. So Nancy, very not so subtly. I love how she's very not subtle about being like, where's this guy's clock? You know that guy that was living with you and then he died? Do you have his clock? Like, it's a random thing. It's definitely a Canadian type of Canadian British type of humor. Yeah, it's a very dry type of humor, which personally I love. It's like I've watched those episodes like so many times, and every time I still catch things. I'm like, oh, I never noticed that before. That's really funny. Reminds me of The Office, kind of in that way, where it's just like every time I watch it, something else makes me laugh. All right, so Nancy is off to Moon Lake. At least in the games, Moon Lake is named Moon Lake because it is shaped like a crescent moon. Isn't that cute? Camp Avondale is also referenced in Nancy Drew Secret of the Old Clock, the PC game, but it's a much smaller reference. It doesn't get to have its name in the title of the game like Moon Lake does. Oh, we're almost to a picture! All right, we're on chapter 10, you guys. This is the halfway point. Chapter 10, Following a Clue. With soaring spirits, Nancy walked homeward. I wonder, she thought, how the Tophams will feel about Josiah Crowley's old clock if it costs them the inheritance they're counting on. At dinner that night, Nancy chatted with unusual animation, deciding not to tell her exciting plans until after Hannah had served dessert. Mr. Drew, however, sensed the big news was coming. My dear, he said, laying a hand on his daughter's arm, you look like the cat that swallowed the canary. What's the big scoop? Nancy giggled. Oh, Dad, I can't keep any secrets from you. Then, as the table was cleared, the young sleuth told of her great stroke of luck. And just think, Helen invited me to her aunt's camp. That is a kind of Deus Ex Machina thing, isn't it? Kind of. Not really, but anyway. Good, her father commented, smiling. You can combine business with pleasure, Nancy. Swimming and boating are fun with the girls will provide a much-needed vacation. May I start first thing in the morning? His daughter asked. An excellent idea, Nancy. The change will do wonders for you. Go, by all means. Hurriedly, she packed a suitcase, and the next morning was off to an early start. Moon Lake was about a 50-mile drive. One way to go was past the Hoover girls' farm, and Nancy decided to stop there. As she approached the house, the young sleuth heard singing. It was coming from the barn. How beautiful, Nancy thought, as the clear soprano voice went through a series of trills and flute-like scales. In a moment, the singer appeared, and Nancy teasingly applauded. Allison's eyes danced. Thanks. I was just trying to imitate some of the greats. You'll be great yourself one of these days, Nancy prophesied. That's kind of mean. Like, she means well, but Nancy, give better compliments than that. Not unless I get some money to finance lessons, Allison said. Any news, Nancy? Sort of. I've had a little luck. At this moment, Grace appeared and instantly invited Nancy to stay, but the young detective said she, too, had work to do. I hope to have a good report for you soon, she added, and waved goodbye. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. Anyway. Grace's face brightened, and Allison declared cheerfully. Then there's still hope. We're so lucky to have you as a friend, Nancy. Come see us again soon, please. Resuming her journey, Nancy soon branched off from the river road and headed towards Moon Lake. As she drove along, her thoughts revolved constantly around the Crowley relatives and the Hoovers. She sighed. How different things would be for them now if Josiah hadn't been so secretive. Yes, Josiah, just use lawyers to make a will. This is the illustration. I don't know with the lights how well anybody can see, but Nancy is here in her little blue roadster, and she's pulling up to camp, and her friends are all waving at her. And they're all like, yay, Nancy, she's at camp now. Her reverie was ended by the sudden strange actions of her car. It kept veering to the left of the road. Uh-oh. In spite of her efforts to keep it in the middle. In the middle of the road? I guess it's just like a one-way dirt road. You should be driving in the middle of the road otherwise. With foreboding, Nancy stopped and got out to make an inspection. As she had suspected, a rear tire was flat. Oh dear, she murmured in disgust. Such luck. Though Nancy was able to change a tire, she never relished the task. Quickly, she took out the spare tire from the rear compartment, found the jack and lug wrench, and went to work. Good for her. I don't know how to change a tire. By the time her job was completed, she was hot and a little breathless. Phew, she exclaimed as she started on her way again. I'll be ready for a nice, cool swim in Moon Lake. It was after 12 o'clock when she came in sight of Camp Avondale, run by Helen's aunt. Through the tall trees, Nancy caught a glimpse of the cabins and tents. Beyond, the blue lake sparkled and glimmered in the sunlight. As Nancy drove into the camp, a group of girls gathered about her car. Helen came running out of a cabin to greet her chum. "Girls, it's Nancy Drew!" she exclaimed joyfully, and made introductions. Nancy did not know any of the campers, but in no time they made her feel warmly welcome. "Nancy," said Helen, "park your car back in the dining hall, then come have lunch." "That sounds wonderful," Nancy laughed. "I'm nearly starved." First, she was escorted to the main building where she met Aunt Martha, the camp director, and registered. "May she stay with me?" Helen asked. "Certainly, dear, and I hope you have a splendid time, Nancy." "I'm sure I shall, Aunt Martha." As the two girls walked off, Nancy told Helen about selling the charity dance tickets and gave her the money paid by Mr. Topham. "He surely was generous," Helen commented in surprise. Then she smiled wryly. "I have a feeling he did it more for social prestige than sympathy for the cause." Nancy scarcely had time to deposit her suitcase under her cot and freshen up after the long ride when lunch was announced by the ringing of a bell. Campers hurried from all directions to the dining hall. The food was plain but appetizing, and Nancy ate with zest. The meal over, she was rushed from one activity to another. The girls insisted that she join them in a hike. Then came a cooling dip in the lake. Nancy enjoyed herself immensely, but the Crowley mystery was never far from her mind. "I must find out where the Tophams' cottage is located," she reminded herself, and next managed to go there alone. Nancy's opportunity to accomplish the first part of her quest came when Helen suggested, at about 5 o'clock, "How about going to ride around the lake in the camp launch? There's just time before supper." "Wonderful," Nancy accepted readily. "By the way, can you see many of the summer cottages from the water?" "Oh yes, lots of them." I love how Nancy's not subtle at all, how she brings up questions. Helen led her friend down to a small dock and with 4 other girls climbed into the launch, a medium-sized craft. As one of the campers started the motor, Helen remarked, "It's always a relief to us when this engine starts. Once in a while it balks, but you never know when or where." "Yes," spoke up a girl named Barbie. "And when you're stuck this time of year, you're stuck. There are hardly any cottagers up here yet." Is that a word? Cottagers. "So their boats are still in winter storage." I love how they're just like joking about maybe getting stuck in the middle of a lake on a boat that just breaks down randomly. As the little launch turned out into the lake, Nancy was entranced with a beautiful sight before her. The delicate azure blue of the sky and the mellow gold of the late afternoon sun were reflected in the shimmering surface of the water. What a lovely scene for an oil painting, she thought. Nancy Drew would have loved Bob Ross. As they sped along, however, Nancy kept glancing at the cottages, intermingled with tall evergreen trees that bordered the shoreline. "The Tophams have a bungalow up here, haven't they?" she questioned casually. "Yes, it's across the lake," Helen replied. "We'll come to it soon." "Is anyone staying there now?" "Oh no, the cottage is closed. It's been looked after by Jeff Tucker, the caretaker. He's the tallest, skinniest man I've ever seen outside a circus." Dang, Helen! That's so mean! You can't say that, Helen! "Is it hard to get to the place?" "Not if you go by launch, but it's a long way if you take the road around the lake." Helen looked at her friend. "I didn't know you were particularly interested in the Tophams, Nancy." "Oh, they're not friends of mine, as you know," Nancy returned hastily. "I was merely curious." After a time, as the launch slowed down and chugged along the close shore, Helen pointed out a wide path through the woods. At the end of it stood a large, rambling white cottage. "That's the Topham place," she said. Trying not to appear too eager, Nancy looked intently at the bungalow. She made a quick mental note of its location. "Tomorrow, I'll visit that place and try to solve the mystery," she told herself. Let's all be thankful that Nancy is on the side of justice and she doesn't want to, like, rob houses, because she'd probably be very good at it. Illustration looks like a Mad Hatter, a felt log, and a tent. Yeah, it's hard to see. I really should have a closer up view, but we're kind of working with what we've got today. But yeah, Nancy, she's like pulling up to like the camp, and she's like, "Hey guys, who's ready to do camp stuff?" Fun fact: Bess and George, Nancy's very prominent best friends who are in most of the books, do not show up until the 6th book in the series. First 5 books, her friend is Helen Corning. This Helen. And then I guess they just... I don't remember what the reason was. There was some reason why they switched and stopped writing Helen and started writing Bess and George. But I've always loved Bess and George, so I kind of am sad that they're not in this book. Hope you do some video day on The Critic. Very underrated 90s animation show from a couple of the Simpsons producers. I've actually never heard of that. But you'd really enjoy it. Apologies, I'm distracting you. You're not distracting me. No, I like reading your comments, and sometimes I'm trying to read chapters at a time without like you know, getting distracted so that we can make progress in the book, but I love reading all your comments. Could you do a video on how to change a tire? I think Dad, How Do I is your guy for that. I'm sure he's done a tire changing video. A hike immediately after a meal. Yeah, that's... it's not good. I remember at one time when I was at sleepaway camp as a teenager, someone talked me into going on a run right after breakfast, and that was awful. I was miserable. Oh, cottagers mean something else now? Damn. The language of this book is so unnecessarily outdated, isn't it? Like, you can't just burn someone like that. I know, right, Helen? Helen is kind of a savage. Checking to make sure that the stream is still running. It's still working, right? We're not cutting out. Okay, good. Just checking. I had this like panic all of a sudden that the stream was cutting off, and I was like, oh no, God, no. Oh, it's only 8:37. We're making good time, guys. Stream signal's been good. Okay, that's good. Just making sure there wasn't like a whatever. A lag. Oh. I know everybody's in a different time zone, but for those in similar time zones to me, did everybody have dinner? Did you eat? Turning into my mom friend while I take a minute from reading. Haven't eaten yet. Go eat something. Well, we've got 10 concurrent viewers in here. That's awesome. Thank you guys, by the way. I'm never sure when I stream if it's gonna go well or terribly, so I appreciate it. I got my mom and grandmom something for Mother's Day. Yeah. Yeah. I actually don't want to say in case she's watching the stream right now. Yeah, Mother's Day is coming up, at least in the US. I don't know if Mother's Day is... I'm sure it's different around the world. But yeah, Mother's Day on Sunday, and I get to see Multiverse of Madness tomorrow. I'm so excited. Can't tell you how excited I am. Oh, speaking of Bob Ross, here, make sure that Bob Ross is viewable. Nancy Drew would love Bob Ross, by the way. I get the feeling that Nancy is good at everything, and she'd definitely be good at painting. Multiverse on Thursday. Twitter's already spoiled it. So I heard something, and nobody spoil it for anybody, please, dear God, in the comments. But like, I heard something about like, oh, everybody's spoiling Multiverse, and I was like, I was avoiding it because I'm not one of those people where like I'll be devastated. Like, it's not like gonna ruin my life if I get something spoiled. But I obviously was trying not to be spoiled since I'm just a couple days away from seeing the movie. But like, yeah, I saw something about like everybody was spoiling the movie, and I was like, how? It's not out. I guess there were a bunch of leaks from set, right? Like, that's unfortunate. Nancy Drew meets Batman. When, yeah, who do you think would solve the mystery first? Would it be Nancy Drew or Batman? I feel like Nancy Drew is better at the detective work. Batman has a lot of has a better fighting record though. He knows like all the martial arts. Bob Ross doc on Netflix is pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. I got the feeling that the documentary makers really wanted like some dirt on Bob Ross, but they just didn't really have any because Bob Ross just genuinely was a pretty cool guy. Lucky to be free of spoilers. Yeah. Don't spoil things for people. It's not cool. Doctor Strange keeps his clothes on. That's a spoiler of sorts. Yeah. That's good to know. You think it would take them both? Yeah, I feel like Nancy Drew and Batman would be a really good team. I feel like that's a cartoon crossover that needs to happen eventually. Get on that. Who owns Warner Brothers? Warner Brothers needs to work on that. Oh, the spoilers about other characters. Yeah, I mean, like, I expect multiple other characters to show up, but, Batman vs. Dracula. Yes, I've been meaning to do that video since almost the beginning of the channel, because Batman vs. Dracula traumatized me as a child, and I watched it again recently, and I was like, this is honestly not a bad Batman movie. This is actually pretty alright. I like this movie. Oh my gosh. It's just, Batman vs. Dracula is a wild ride. I remember, speaking of spoilers that aren't spoilers anymore, because I'm pretty sure everybody has seen No Way Home at this point, but, you know, when the other Spider-Man showed up, and, like, everybody had already been spoiled before the movie came out, all I was thinking of is just, like, how cool would it have been if they truly could get away with us not knowing or having any idea. Like, the theater I was in, everybody went insane, but I can't even imagine if we didn't know. Like, blood is made black to get around the. So, do you guys know about the this is off topic, sorry. This is the vibe part of the reading and vibe. You know about the thing in The Shining where, like, you know, the trailer, it shows all the blood, like, splashing around in the hallway? Well, they got around the censorship by just telling them that it was chocolate. And censorship was like, oh, okay. And they were like, joke's on you, it's blood. No, I just started 2002 Spider-Man. I'm sure that's a joke, but I feel genuinely bad now. Can't wait for Sam Raimi to direct the up-and-coming movie. Horrible movie, but I think it's based on the Planet of the Apes. Oh, that's interesting. What kind of horror film was Chocolate Lady? I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea. My hot take is The Shining is just kind of a mid movie. That's my hot take of the century. It was a joke. Yeah, I know, but it's Batman versus Ninja Turtles. It's great. Is that actually a thing? Because that's great. Oh, I want chocolate. Me too. Yeah, The Shining, that's my hot take that like everybody gets on me for. It's The Shining, it's not bad, but it's not like my favorite horror movie. As far as like classic horror movies, my favorite is and will always be The Exorcist. Maybe the bit with Gene Wilder and Wonka in the boat. That Willy Wonka should be classified as a horror movie, at least the Gene Wilder one. That boat ride scene is terrifying. Maybe the next reading can be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I thought about that. If you guys genuinely are into it, I would love that. That's even a shorter book than this one, and there's a lot more illustrations that nobody will be able to see. Shining is really good, but I don't think it's horror, more thriller than anything. That's a good way. Like, if you classify it as, like, thriller, I understand it a lot more. Yeah. I've never read the book. I have a friend who ardently will fight that the book is way better than the movie, which usually the books are. They just have more information, but, like... The Shining is a really good movie from the perspective of, like, the film, the cinematography that they do. I do think they have some really beautiful shots. The Shining, but as a children's book. Can you imagine the trauma, the nightmares? As it is, I watched The Shining when I was probably way too young to see The Shining. Stream on the date at 70s. Oh, like on the anniversary, we do a stream. Sometimes I've thought about, because there are lots of movies in the public domain, and I've toyed with the idea of giving certain things like a stream, either instead of or before doing a full video on them. Yeah, like a movie night, like maybe. Like what we did when we did the charity stream, where there was just certain things that, like, I was like, this is cool, but we can't really make a full video about it. Let's just do it as a tier goal on the charity stream. That was really fun. My dad was watching the charity stream for anybody who saw it, and he apparently watched up until we started doing the Disney sing-along, and then he was like, I can't do the sing-along, I'm out. I'm sorry, I'll come back later. There are some decent movies in the public domain. One of my favorite classic movies is The House on Haunted Hill, which is in the public domain because of a clerical error. It's genuinely a really fun movie. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reading would be cool. Maybe the sequel book too. Yes, if we do a stream for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we have to talk about Charlie and the Glass Elevator because that book is insane. And no one ever made a movie about it, so I can't make a video about said movie that doesn't exist. I'm about to make just a non-profit remake of that movie or that book because it is insane. He and your pop would get along. Yeah. He's never been a sing-along guy. Same with Night of the Living Dead. That's right, that is in the public domain. Yeah, there's a lot of great movies in the public domain. I'm shocked in the time that I've spent covering things on this channel, how many things I've been able to find just on YouTube. Like, more than half of the videos that I've made, I think I've been able to, like, link to another video on YouTube that just shows you the full thing to watch. With the copyright error because of a title change. Yeah, they just straight up made an error in the paperwork, and House on Haunted Hill went into the public domain way earlier. I found that out because we use a clip of House on Haunted Hill in my very first short film that we ever made, and we were able to do it because we just it was for a film fest and we needed to not use, we obviously couldn't use anything that wasn't either in the public domain or that we didn't have rights to, and we were able to use that one because it's completely in the public domain. It was perfect for the scene that we were doing. Yeah, I love that movie. Pushing Up Roses, I think, did a really great video recap of that movie, and I also want to cover it eventually because it's great. All right, I'll start soon on chapter 11. Not chapter 11 like bankruptcy, like chapter 11 of this book. We're almost 100 pages in, guys. We're making good progress. King Kong's novelization released before the Oju film is also public domain, which is why Kong is never called King Kong, because RKO and Universal hold the rights to the name movie. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I love when I would go to Universal Studios in Orlando. I love because they have like all the all those classic movies, and they do like the horror makeup show, which is so funny. But like they have like a whole like Hall of Fame of all the like movie monsters, all those old movies. It's great. Moving to the MonsterVerse film. Oh, okay. I'm slightly caught up now. I love this mug so much, but it is so big I can't like. I struggle to even like hold it. Like, look at this. It's like the size of my head. It's like the what is it? Is it Parks and Rec, where it's like, this is our child-sized drink. It is the size that a child would be if the child were liquefied. Oh, you're not gonna put Round the Twist theme song stuck in my head. It's gonna be stuck in my head all weekend. All right, I'm gonna start the next chapter of this book. Can adapt the book as long as I don't outright use any imagery directly lifted from films, i.e. That's really interesting. Like, copyright law is so strange in a good way sometimes. Fun fact, Sherlock Holmes is in the public domain, but the family, Arthur Conan Doyle's family owns the rights to some of the later books. And those are the ones where he started writing Sherlock Holmes a lot more empathetic and like less of an asshole. And so whenever anybody adapts that version, that characterization of Sherlock Holmes, the family tries to sue them. And they never win, but it's always a big headache. So that's why you generally see Sherlock Holmes as kind of like a grumpy old man. King Kong straight up jumps off the building. That's interesting. All right. Ooh, 11 concurrent viewers for chapter 11. I'm going to take that as a good omen. Everybody make a wish. All right. Chapter 11, An Unexpected Adventure. Nancy awoke the next morning to the fragrant odor of pines. Eager to start out for the Topham bungalow, she dressed quickly. But in her plans, she had reckoned without Helen Corning and her friends. From the moment breakfast was over, Nancy was swept into another whirlwind of activity by the campers of Avondale. The entire day passed, without a chance for her to break away. Oh, Helen, Nancy groaned as she tumbled into bed that night. Tennis matches, canoe races, swimming, water skiing. It's been fun, but tomorrow I think I'll stay out of the activities. Helen laughed gaily. You'll change your mind after a sound sleep, Nancy. Wait and see. For an answer, Nancy murmured a sleepy goodnight, but even as she slipped into slumber, she vowed that in the morning she would not be deterred again from visiting the Topham summer place. After breakfast the next day, Nancy stood firm in her resolve. When Helen urged her to accompany the girls on an all-day hike, Nancy shook her head. Thanks a lot, but please excuse me today, Helen. She's like, Helen, I gotta just calm down, Helen. Normally, Nancy would have loved going on such a hike, but she had to achieve her plan of sleuthing. Sleuthing plan would be a great name for a band. I'll have to add that one to the list. Helen, though disappointed, heeded her friend's plea and trudged off with the other campers into the woods. As soon as they were out of sight, Nancy leapt into action. After obtaining Aunt Martha's permission to use the launch, she hurried down the dock. Nancy had frequently handled motorboats and was confident she could manage this one. Now, full speed ahead for the Tophams. I like to imagine she just screamed that, even though she was alone. She was like, full speed ahead for the Tophams. To her delight, the motor started immediately, and Nancy steered out into the lake. As the launch cut through the water, a cool spray blew into her face. The young sleuth felt a thrill of excitement as she guided the craft towards her destination, which might hold a solution to the mystery. If only the Tophams caretaker will let me in when I get there, she thought. Nancy's heart beat somewhat faster as she neared her goal. But all of a sudden, there was a sputter from the engine. The next instant, to Nancy's utter dismay, the motor gave one long wheeze and died. Yeah, because remember, everybody they were saying that the motor was bad. Loudly announce where I'm going. Exactly. An all-day hike. Disgusting. Exactly. I wish, thinks of wish. Everybody make a wish. Yeah. Yeah. So the boat is dead. She's just stranded out in the lake. Oh, she cried aloud. Nancy knew that the tank held plenty of fuel, for she had checked this before departing. A moment later, she recalled Helen's remark about the engine becoming balky at times. With a sigh of impatience at the unexpected delay, Nancy examined the motor. For over an hour, she worked on it, trying every adjustment she could think of. But her efforts were useless. There was not a sound of response from the motor. What a miserable luck, she said aloud. Of all the days for the motor to conk out, this means I won't get to the Tophams' cottage after all. For a moment, Nancy was tempted to swim ashore. To be so close to the bungalow and not be able to reach it was tantalizing, but she resisted the impulse. She could not leave the boat stranded. It would drift off and she would be responsible. I'll just have to wait for a passing boat to rescue me, Nancy decided. But fate was against her. The hours dragged by, and not another craft appeared in sight. Nancy became increasingly uncomfortable as the hot sun beat down on her. Also, she was growing weak from hunger. And worst of all, Nancy thought gloomily, another whole day is being wasted. I want to get to the bottom of this mystery. To occupy her mind, Nancy concentrated once more on the motor. Determinedly, she bent over the engine. It was not until the sun sank low in the sky that she sat up and drew a long breath. There, she declared, I've done everything. If it doesn't start now, it never will. So Nancy just is a boat mechanic in her free time. That's awesome. To her relief and astonishment, it responded with a steady roar as if nothing had ever gone wrong. Nancy lost no time heading back towards camp. She dared not attempt to visit the bungalow since it would be dark very soon. When finally she eased up to the dock, Nancy saw Helen and her friends awaiting her. They greeted her with delight. We were just going to send out a search party for you, Helen exclaimed. She stopped abruptly and stared at her friend. You're sunburned and covered with grease. What happened? Nancy laughed. I had an extended sunbath. Then she gave a light-hearted account of her mishap, and the campers trooped back to the cabins. When Helen learned that Nancy had had nothing to eat since breakfast, she went to the kitchen and brought back some food. The following morning, the young sleuth decided on her next move. Directly after breakfast, she began packing. When Helen entered the cabin, she exclaimed in amazement, Why, Nancy Drew, you're not leaving camp already. I'm afraid I'll have to, Helen. Right after lunch. I may be back, but I'm not sure, so I'd better take my bag with me. Don't you like it here? Of course, Nancy assured her. I've had a wonderful time. It's just that there's something very important I must attend to at once. Helen looked at her friend searchingly, then grinned. Nancy Drew, you're working on some mystery with your father. Well, sort of, Nancy admitted, but I'll try to get back, okay? Oh, please do, Helen begged. Nancy went to the office to pay Aunt Martha and explain her hasty departure. After lunch, she set off in her car to a chorus of farewells from the campers who sadly watched her depart. Did they all? I figure they're all, like, out there waving Downton Abbey style, like, on the front. She headed the car towards the end of the lake, then took the dirt road leading to the Topham cottage. Soon she came to a fork in the woods. Now, which way shall I turn from the bungalow? She wondered. After a moment's hesitation, Nancy calculated that she should turn left towards the water, and did so. The going was rather rough due to ruts in the road. 2 of them, deeper than the others, apparently had been made by a heavy truck. The tracks appear fresh, Nancy mused. As she drove along, the young sleuth noticed a number of summer cottages. Most of them were still boarded up, since it was early in the season, and she gazed at one of them. The steering wheel was nearly wrenched from her hand by a crooked rut. As Nancy turned the steering wheel to bring the car back to the center of the narrow road, one hand accidentally touched the horn. It blared loudly in the still woods. That must have scared all the birds and animals, Nancy chuckled. Around a bend in the road, she caught sight of a white bungalow ahead on the right side of the road. There was no sign of the entrance to the driveway to indicate that the owner was, but a wooden path leading down to the lake looked like the one she had seen from the water. I think I'll walk down to the shore and look at the cottage from there, Nancy determined. Then I'll know for sure if this is the place Helen pointed out. Nancy parked at the edge of the road and got out. To her surprise, she observed that the truck's tire marks turned into the driveway. A second set of tracks indicated that the vehicle had backed out and gone down the road. Delivering supplies for the summer, no doubt, Nancy told herself. She went down the path to the water and turned around to look at the cottage. It's the Tophams, all right, Nancy decided. Instead of coming back by way of the path, she decided to take a short cut through the woods. With mounting anticipation, I have to do it every time now, of solving the Crowley mystery, she reached the road and hurried up the driveway. I hope the caretaker is here, she thought. Nancy suddenly stopped short with a gasp of astonishment. Why, the Tophams must be moving out! The front and side doors of the cottage stood wide open. Some of the furniture on the porch was overturned and various small household items were strewn along the driveway. Nancy bent to examine some marks in the soft earth. She noted that several were boot prints, while others were long lines probably caused by dragging cartons and furniture across the lawn. That must have been a moving van's truck I saw, Nancy told herself, but the Tophams didn't say anything about moving. She frowned in puzzlement. Her feelings persisted and grew stronger as she walked up the steps of the cottage porch. Nancy knocked loudly on the open door. No response. Nancy rapped again. Silence. Where was Jeff Tucker, the caretaker, and why wasn't he on hand to keep an eye on the moving activities? An air of complete desertion hung over the place. There's something very strange about this, she thought. Curious and puzzled, Nancy entered the living room. Again, her eyes met a scene of disorder. Except for a few small pieces, the room was bare of furniture. Even the draperies had been pulled from their rods, and all the floor coverings were gone. It's like the Grinch was there. Most of the furnishings have been taken out, Nancy thought. I suppose the movers will be back for the other odds and ends. She made a careful tour of the first floor. All but one room had been virtually emptied. This was a small study. As Nancy entered it, she noticed that the rug lay rolled up and tied, and some of the furniture had evidently been shifted in readiness for moving. Funny, I didn't hear anything about the Tophams deciding to give up their cottage, she murmured. And I must say the moving men were awfully careless. A vague suspicion that had been forming in the back of Nancy's mind now came into startling focus. Those men may not be movers, she burst out. They may be thieves. She finally got there. She finally stuck that landing. At once, Nancy thought of the dark gray van which had stopped at the Turners. Those men may be the same ones who robbed them. That would explain, Nancy thought fearfully, The evidence of the truck's hasty departure. Probably the thieves were scared away when I sounded the horn. I was wondering why that was so randomly thrown in there. Nancy glanced about uneasily. What if the men were still nearby, waiting for a chance to return and pick up the remaining valuables? The realization that she was alone, some distance from the nearest house, swept over her. A tingling sensation crept up Nancy's spine. But resolutely, she shook off her nervousness. At least I must see if the Crowley clock is still here, Nancy reminded herself, and then went through the bungalow again. She found no trace of the timepiece, however. I guess the thieves took that too, Nancy concluded. I'd better report this robbery to the police right now. She looked about for a phone, but there was none. I'll have to drive to the nearest state police headquarters. Nancy started toward the front door. Passing a window, she glanced out, then paused in sheer fright. A man wearing a cap, pulled low over his eyes, was stalking up the driveway towards the cottage. He was not tall and slender like the caretaker. This stranger was rather short and heavy-set. This man fits the Turner's description. He must be one of the thieves who stole the silver heirlooms, Nancy thought wildly. End of chapter. Jasper and Horace back at it again with the white van. Nancy meets Jaws. Yeah, pretty much. I would not put it past these books to be extra enough to have a shark attack Nancy's boat. Nancy Drew meets Creatures of the Black Lagoon. My grandmother is terrified of that movie to this day. She saw it in theaters when it first came out as a kid, and she was like too young, and she's scared of it to this very, very day. Nancy is an engineer too. Yeah, Nancy can do everything. She could have used her arms as oars, yeah. Jack of all trades, that girl, awesome. She is awesome. Hot take on Atlanta bands. B-52s are better than REM, even though Losing My Religion is all-timer. I'm not a huge fan of REM, but what I am a fan of is, I'm blanking on his name, the lead singer. He did a voice in, he was the flightless reindeer in All of the Other Reindeer, and that's what sticks in my head every time anybody mentions REM. The truck is back. Yep, the heavy truck could be the one that stole the silverware and furniture. Yep. You get Super Sleuther of the night because you figured it out quicker than Nancy. The thieves stole the clock so they don't have to do any time. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so Nancy's now stuck in the middle of the woods with two known thieves. Poor Nancy. My tea's going cold, but I'm also kind of feeling like I'm losing my voice, so I'm taking a second. Yeah, I genuinely don't remember. The thieves very well could be looking for the clock if they know about it somehow, but I don't know. That's the only reason for the same robbers to just conveniently keep showing up, right? They have to know something. Nancy needs to roll a 20 to get out of every situation comes next. I would love to play Nancy Drew D&D, by the way. That would be such a fun D&D game. The poor spine of this book is still holding on by a thread. This book is so old. They probably know that the old guy was dead and had expensive stuff. That's very possible. It seems like River Heights is a relatively small town. Like, I'm kind of just picturing a 1930s version of, Grandview. What is that? Isn't that where she lives in Ghost Whisperer? That's what I'm picturing. Yes, Ghost Whisperer was the first small town reference I could think of. I don't know why. Alright, the next chapter is pretty short. Next chapter is only 6 pages. I'll just get into it. I do vaguely remember this part of the story. Roll a d20 to dodge stabbing, and then you roll a 1, you roll a d20, see how many stabs you take, you roll a 20. Yeah. My brother's got some pretty bad luck when it comes to, like, his luck on rolling dice. Like, every time he rolls, like, a 1 or 2. Like, it's just a running joke at this point. Needs, like, some lucky dice. Alright. Chapter 12. A Desperate Situation. For a moment, Nancy stood frozen on the spot, positive that the man who was coming to the Topham cottage was one of the thieves. But she hesitated only an instant. Then she turned and ran back into the study. Too late, she realized that she had trapped herself, and the room had no other door. Nancy started back towards the living room, but before she had taken half a dozen steps, she knew that escape had been cut off from the direction. The man had reached the porch steps. It won't do a bit of good to talk to him, she reasoned. I'll hide. When he leaves, I'll follow him in my car and report him to the police. Frantically, the young sleuth glanced about for a hiding place. A closet offered the only possible refuge. She scurried inside and closed the door. Nancy was not a second too soon. She had scarcely shut the door when she heard the tread of the man's heavy shoes on the floor just outside. Peeping cautiously through a tiny crack in the door, she saw the heavy-set man come into the study. His face wore a cruel expression. As he turned towards the closet where she huddled, Nancy hardly dared to breathe lest her presence be detected. Apparently, the man noticed nothing amiss because his eyes rested only casually on the door. Nancy's hiding place was anything but comfortable. It was a dark and musty, old clothing hung from the nails on the walls. As dust assailed her nostrils, she held a handkerchief to her face. If I sneeze, he'll surely find me, she told herself. She felt around and once came close to ripping her hand on a sharp nail. Then she came upon something soft on a shelf and imagined it was a sleeping cat. She drew back and then touched it more cautiously. Only an old fur cap, she told herself in disgust. Ooh, now I feel like sneezing more than ever. So first of all, Nancy hates furs. Good for Nancy. She is a queen. And second of all, the first thing she thought of was that it's a cat. That's really funny. That must suck. Yeah, my allergies feel like they're acting up just describing all of this dust. She held one hand over her mouth and waited in agony. But presently the desire to sneeze passed, and Nancy breathed more freely. When she dared to peep out through the crack a second time, she saw that 2 other rough-looking men had come into the room. One was short and stout, the other taller. Nancy was sure that neither of these 2 men was the caretaker, because Helen Corning had mentioned that the man was skinny. Jeez, don't body shame them, Nancy. The heavy-set man who had come first seemed to be the leader, for he proceeded to issue orders. Get a move on, he growled. We haven't got all day, unless we want to be caught. That girl you saw, Jake? Maybe back any time from the shore. And she just might get snoopy. The man addressed Jake, scowled. What's the matter with you, Sid? Going chicken? If that girl comes around, we'll just give her a smooth story and send her on her way. Conveniently, they've both identified each other for Nancy. Cut out that yakking, said Sid. Parky, you and Jake take that desk out of here. There was no doubt now in Nancy's mind. She was trapped by a clever gang of thieves. She could only continue to watch and listen helplessly from her hiding place. The 2 men lifted the heavy piece of furniture and started with it to the door. But they did not move swiftly enough to satisfy the leader, and he berated them savagely. Jake turned on him. If you're in such a hurry, why don't you bring the van back to the driveway instead of leaving it hidden on that road in the woods? And have someone driving past here see us, sneered the leader. Now get going. Little by little, the men stripped the room of everything valuable. Nancy was given no opportunity to escape. Sid remained in the room while the others made several trips to the van. So there's 3 of them, I guess. Well, I guess we have all the stuff that's worth anything now, Sid muttered at last. He turned to follow the companions who already had left the room. But in the doorway, he paused for a final careful survey of the room. At that same moment, Nancy felt an uncontrollable urge to sneeze. Not again, Nancy. She tried to muffle the sound, but to no avail. The thief wheeled about. Hey, what? Walking directly to the closet, he flung open the door. Oh. Instantly, he spotted Nancy and angrily jerked her out. Spying on us, huh? He snarled. Nancy faced the man defiantly. I wasn't spying on anyone. Then what were you doing in that closet? The thief demanded, his eyes narrowing to slits. I came to see the caretaker. Looking for him in a funny place, ain't you? The man sneered. Nancy realized that she was in a desperate situation, but she steeled herself not to show any of her inward fears. I must keep calm, she told herself firmly. Aloud, she explained coolly. I heard someone coming and I just felt a bit nervous. Well, you're going to be a lot more nervous, the man said threateningly. This will be the last time you ever stick your nose in business that doesn't concern you. They're such, villainy villains, aren't they? A fresh wave of fright swept over Nancy, but resolutely she held on to her courage. You have no right to be here helping yourself to the Topham's furniture, she retorted. You should be turned over to the police. Bad move, Nancy. Never tell them you're going to call the police. Well, you'll never get the chance to do it. The ringleader laughed loudly. You'll wish you never came snooping around here. I'll give you the same treatment the caretaker got. What happened to the caretaker? Did they kill him? Oh, God. The caretaker, Nancy gasped in horror. What have you done with him? You'll find out in good time. Nancy gave a sudden, agile twist, darted past the man, and raced for the door. The thief gave a cry of rage and in one long leap overtook her. He caught Nancy roughly by the arm. Think you're smart, eh? Well, I'm smarter. I doubt that, sir. Nancy struggled to get away. She twisted and squirmed, kicked and clawed, but she was helpless in the vice-like grip of the powerful man. Let me go, Nancy cried, struggling harder. Let me go. Sid, ignoring her pleas, half-dragged her across the room. Opening the closet door, he flung her inside. Nancy heard a key turn. Now you can spy all you want, Sid sneered, but to make sure nobody'll let you out, I'll just take this key along. When Nancy could no longer hear the tramp of his heavy boots, she was sure Sid had left the house. For a moment, a feeling of great relief engulfed her, but the next instant Nancy's heart gave a leap as she heard the muffled roar of the van starting up in the distance. A horrifying realization gripped her. They've left me here to starve, she thought frantically. End of chapter. Does she have cat allergies? I don't know. Nancy owns a dog that she finds in one of the books and then just has him forever. His name's Togo. For his murder. That's cute. Yeah, good for Nancy for hating furs. A smooth story to send her on her way rather than a bludgeon. That's nice of them. Yeah, I mean, at least they were gonna try to. They weren't they didn't hurt Nancy, but they did falsely imprison somebody, so they don't get that many points. She's screwed, yeah. You know Nancy's gonna find her way out. Sort of like if you say, that's the last mistake you'll ever make, is actually a nice thing. It's very reassuring to know that I'll never make any more mistakes in life again. Yeah. I can feel that in my bones. Oh my god, so Nancy is locked in a tiny, cramped little closet all by herself, poor thing. And she told her friends that she was probably leaving, so they have no idea that she's still there. Oh, my pops are being scooched. Yeah, poor Nancy. You're gonna be motivating me with your reading while I play Rocket League with a friend. Have you played or heard of it? Fun time. I've never played it, but I've heard it's fun. She could eat the fur thing for food. God, I hope it doesn't come to that for her sake. Yeah, I hope you have fun playing your game. One thing that I do like about reading streams is they're just kind of a fun thing to have on in the background sometimes, you know? Alright, I've got time for at least one more chapter. Yeah, I've got time for at least one more chapter. Oh, we've been live for 2 hours and 22 minutes. 222. Make another wish. I'm always down for an excuse to make a wish. Alright. Chapter 13. A frustrating wait. At first, Nancy was too frightened to think logically. She beat upon the door with her fist, but the heavy oak panels would not give way. "Help! Help!" she screamed. At last, exhausted by her efforts to force the door open, she sank down onto the floor. The house was as silent as a tomb. Bad as her predicament was, Nancy felt thankful that enough air seeped into the closet to permit normal breathing. That is good. That would have been awful. Although she had little hope that there was anyone within miles of the cottage, Nancy got to her feet, raised her voice, and again shouted for her help. Her cries echoed through the empty house and seemed to mock her. "Oh, why didn't I have enough sense to tell Helen where I was going?" She berated herself miserably. "The girls at camp will never dream that I came here." I'm just confused why she thought that she couldn't tell Helen about the case. Like, I wonder why she feels like she needs to keep it a secret. She's telling everybody else in town. Then Nancy remembered mournfully that her father thought she intended to remain at Camp Avondale for a week. He would not become alarmed over her absence until it was too late. "Someone may find my car on the side of the road," Nancy reasoned, "but it isn't very likely. Few persons pass this way so early in the season." She wondered with a shudder what had become of Jeff Tucker. The thief called Sid had hinted that the caretaker had received the same treatment as Nancy. If he was locked up somewhere, she could expect no aid from him. Is he just locked, like, in a closet, like, across the room? "Those thieves will get so far away that even if I could get out of here, I'd be too late." As the full significance of the situation dawned upon Nancy, panic again took possession of her. In a desperate attempt to break down the door, she threw her weight against it and again. She pounded on the panels until her fingers were bruised and bleeding. Poor thing. She at last sank down again on the floor to rest and tried to force herself to reason calmly. "I'm only wasting my strength this way. I must try to think logically." Nancy recalled that it was sometimes possible to pick a lock with a wire. She removed a bobby pin from her hair and opened it and began to work at the lock. But in the darkness she could not see and made no progress. After 15 minutes she gave up the task in disgust. "It's no use," she decided dejectedly. "I guess I'm in here for good." Side note, as a kid, I was really into detective stuff, and I was convinced that I could teach myself how to pick locks with bobby pins, and I never could do it. She began to think of her father, of Hannah Gruen, of Helen Corning, and other dear friends. Would she ever see them again? Okay, calm down. You're gonna live, Nancy. It's okay. As despondently As despondency claimed Nancy, she was dangerously near tears. This will never do, she reprimanded herself sternly. I must keep my head up and try to think of some way to escape. She's such a trooper. The trapped girl began to rummage in the closet, hoping that by some lucky chance she might find a tool which would help her force the lock of the door. Nancy searched carefully through the pockets and every garment which hung from the hooks. She groped over every inch of the floor. She found nothing useful, however, and the cloud of dust which she had stirred up made breathing more difficult than before. The closet had become uncomfortably warm by this time. Longingly, she thought of the fresh air and cool lake water from which she was closed off. Then, unexpectedly, Nancy's hand struck something hard. Quickly investigating with her fingers, she discovered a wooden rod suspended high overhead. It was fastened to either side wall, and it ran through the length of the closet. Evidently, it had once been used for dress and coat hangers. I might be able to use that rod to break out a panel of the door, Nancy thought hopefully. It feels strong, and it's about the right size. Well, she'd have to, have some, space to, push it again. I don't know. Physics. She tugged at the rod with all her might. When it did not budge, she swung herself back and forth on it. At last, amid the crackling of plaster, one side gave way. Another hard jerk brought the rod down. To Nancy's bitter disappointment, she found that unfortunately the rod was too long to use as a ram in the cramped space. But after further examination, she discovered that it had pointed ends. I might use this rod to wedge in the crack, she thought hopefully. The young sleuth inserted one end of into the space between the hinges and the other and the door, and threw all her weight against the rod. At first, the door did not move in the slightest. That old Greek scientist Archimedes didn't know what he was talking about when he said the world could be moved with a lever, Nancy murmured. I'd like to see him move this door. So Nancy's just in a closet in the dark, just like, damn, Greek scientists don't know shit. That's basically what Nancy just said. As she applied steady pressure to the rod a second time, she saw that the hinges were beginning to give. Encouraged, Nancy again pushed full force on the lever. It's coming, she cried. Once more she threw her weight against the rod. A hinge tore from the casing, and the door sagged. It was now easy to insert the wedge, and Nancy joyously realized that the success would soon be hers. With renewed strength, she continued her efforts. Then, just as another hinge gave way, she was startled to hear footsteps. Someone came running into the study, and a heavy body hurled itself against the door of the closet. For a moment, Nancy was stunned. Could this be one of the thieves who had heard the noise she had made and had returned to make sure that she did not escape? She discarded the theory quickly. Surely the three men would want to get far away as quickly as possible. But who was this newcomer? One of the Tophams? So one of you ornery robbers got yourself locked up, did you? Came an indignant male voice. That'll teach you to try putting one over on old Jeff Tucker. You won't be doing any more pilfering. I got you surrounded. I don't know why when I read Tucker's dialogue, I'm just picturing Larry the Cable Guy. That's not... Anyway. There's somebody with a really thick Southern accent. I mean, I know Larry the Cable Guy doesn't have a real Southern accent, but anyway. The caretaker. Nancy heaved a sigh of fervent relief. Let me out, she pleaded. I'm not one of the thieves. If you'll only let me out of here, I'll explain everything. There was silence for a moment. Then the voice of the other side of the door said dubiously, Say, you aiming to throw me off? Imitating a lady's voice? Well, it won't do any good. No, sir. Old Jeff Tucker's not getting fooled again. Old Jeff Tucker does not believe in women. Nancy decided to convince the man beyond doubt. She gave a loud, long, feminine scream. All right, ma'am. I believe you. No man could make that racket. This way out, lady. What's happening? I'm sorry, it shouldn't be that funny, but it's just funny. He, like, just straight up doesn't believe that women exist, apparently. Expectantly, Nancy waited, but the door did not open. Then she heard, to her dismay, "If that ain't the limit, the key's gone and I'll have left my ring of extra keys somewhere. It's not in my pockets." Nancy groaned. "Oh, Mr. Tucker, you must find it. Have you looked in every one of your pockets? Please hurry and get me out." "Hold on, ma'am," the caretaker said soothingly. "I'll just check again." Nancy was beginning to think that she would still have to break down the door when she heard Jeff Tucker exclaim, "Found it! You were right, ma'am. Key was in my back pocket all the time." So Nancy has to walk a dude on the other side of a door through helping her get out of a locked door. That's hilarious. "Please open the door," Nancy broke in desperately. A key turned in the lock and the bolt clicked. Joyfully, Nancy pushed the door open and stepped out. For a moment, the bright sunlight in the room almost blinded her. When her vision adjusted, she saw a very tall, thin, elderly man in a blue shirt and overalls. He stared at her with concern and amazement. "Mr. Tucker," she explained quickly, "I'm Nancy Drew. I was here looking for you when those awful thieves came in and locked me in the closet." She paused and gazed at the caretaker. "I'm glad to see you're all right. Their leader told me that they'd locked you up too." She then asked the elderly man to tell his story. Jeff Tucker seemed embarrassed as he had begun to speak. "I was plain hog-swoggled by those critters, Miss Drew. They pulled up here in moving van and told me I'd better get after some trespassers they'd seen nearby, so," the elderly man went on with a sigh, "I believed them. One of the men went with me down to the lake and locked me in the shed. I just got out." He shook his head sadly. "And all this time, they was robbing the place. Guess I'll be fired." Secretly, Nancy was inclined to agree, knowing the Tophams, but aloud, she said reassuringly, "Don't worry, Mr. Tucker. I'm sure we'll report this robbery to the state police immediately. Perhaps the troopers can catch the thieves before they get rid of the stolen furniture." The caretaker looked somewhat relieved. "And I can sure give you a good description of those crooks. I'd never forgot their ugly faces." "Fine," said Nancy. A sudden thought struck her. "Oh, before we go, Mr. Tucker, tell me, was there an old clock in this house? A tall, square-faced mantel clock?" Jeff Tucker's bright blue eyes squinted. "Mantel clock? Why, sure enough," he pointed to the mantel over to the living room fireplace. "Sat right up there. Got so used to seeing it, I couldn't remember for a minute. Don't know how come they took it, too. Never thought it was worth much, but the Tophams never bothered winding the thing." Nancy's pulse quickened. Knowing that the clock had been stolen, she was more eager than ever to have the thieves apprehended. She urged Jeff Tucker to hurry out with her car. Jeff Tucker to hurry out to her car. "Where's the nearest state police headquarters?" she asked him as they climbed into the convertible. "There's none till you get to Melbourne, Miss Drew." "Well, hurry." Nancy headed as fast as possible for the highway. Would she succeed in heading off the thieves and recovering the old Crowley clock so she could learn its secrets? End of chapter. Oh my god, that was my favorite chapter so far. She had to talk this guy through getting her out of a locked closet. I won't sleep well if I don't know she escapes the closet. She escapes the closet, it's fine. Trying to help. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. It really means a lot. I know I say that and everybody says that, but it means a lot. You could have softened the wood of the door by crying into it? Yeah. Still time to learn to pick locks. Yeah. It's on the bucket list. Not that I would ever break into anything, but just, you know, my dreams of being a super sleuth are still alive. Damn Greek scientist. Nancy Drew, 1930s. Yeah. Yeah, she's like worried she's gonna die, and she's like, damn Greek scientists. Women? What are they, mermaids with legs? Yeah. I like that. Mermaids with legs. Mr. Tucker is a riot, yeah. Melbourne, Australia? Yeah, they have to drive all the way to Melbourne, Australia. The convertible gets great gas mileage. It's a very long drive. And doesn't believe in women, real ladies, man. I love that he's just like, what are you, some kind of guy doing a woman's voice to trick me? He's like, it's like, what, sir? He like genuinely thought that one of these, that like a robber would be like, I don't even know what he thought. I don't know what thinking goes through Mr. Tucker's head. Very, very, very strange man. He's just like, huh? A girl? They haven't been invented. Nancy Drew, I am Speed. And then Nancy Drew turns into Lightning McQueen and they drive off to Melbourne, Australia. That's the end of the book. Oh my god. Oh, yeah. Poor Nancy. I hope we hear more from Mr. Tucker. I think he's in the car with her, right? They're in the... Yeah, he's in the passenger seat while Nancy's driving. So we will see more of Mr. Tucker. I guess he thought one of the dudes that locked him into the shed had somehow locked himself in the closet. I don't know why that was more plausible than just a girl existing. Tucker and Nancy versus Evil. Yeah, if only Mr. Tucker was the sidekick to Nancy for the rest of all these books. In all honesty, he kind of, in my brain, I'm picturing, if anybody's ever watched Murder, She Wrote, you know, the first, I don't know if he's like the sheriff or the sheriff's deputy. The one, he was on the show for a while, pretty early on, especially, and he was in, Pet Sematary. He's like the only actor I've ever known to do, like, an accurate Maine accent. You know, Mr. Tucker and Nancy just give sass to each other, back and forth. Jeff. His name is Jeff. I think we're on first name terms with Jeff Tucker. Oh my goodness. So we're 13 chapters in. We're 118 pages. The bad news is that we're most certainly gonna not finish the book on this stream. Tragically. We've got a little bit more to go. One more stream, probably. We have 7 chapters left. Lucky 13. Yeah, I think Lucky 13 might be a good place to stop. We've got 7 chapters left. I think we read 6 chapters the first stream and 7 the second stream. Are we still liking the reading stream? Are we liking the format? Saddle Club commentary is pretty fun to watch. Thank you. I should do another Saddle Club video soon. If only Pureflix wasn't the sole place to get Saddle Club episodes here in America. I refuse to give that company money. And the Adventures of Skippy, yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys like the stream. I don't know if I'll be able to stream tomorrow night, unfortunately. And I won't be streaming on Mother's Day because I have a mother. But hopefully at the latest, Monday will be a stream, so we can finish this book. Yeah. But let me know what you think. I know, I'm sorry. I'll have to see. Yeah. I didn't plan on doing back-to-back streams, but I'm glad I did. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah. I think we did 6 chapters in last night's stream and then 7 in this one. Reading stream is nice. You helped me win. LOL. Congratulations. Glad you won. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. You know, I really appreciate it. It's been really fun. I can't wait to do the next one and we can finally finish it and then maybe talk about a different book to start streaming through. And obviously videos are a thing that'll keep happening too. But yeah, I think I'm gonna sign off for the night. Thank you guys. Especially if you were here for the whole of, how long have we been on? 2 hours and 41 minutes. So if you were here for any of that time, I really appreciate you. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. Good night, everybody. Or good morning. I know some of you, it's morning where you are. Bye. Anytime. Thank you for being here for the stream. As long as I don't feel forced to do it. No, I'll always take breaks when I want to. Don't worry. I really do enjoy streaming and making content. I love the community on this channel. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. I'll see you really soon. Good night.